75. Welcome to Konoha. He really enjoyed hearing their cheers as he stood atop the tower. He also liked finally getting to wear the hat. The hat was cool. When the cheers finally ended, he turned around to receive congratulations from all the people he'd invited. His mom hugged him and gave him a kiss on the cheek. Hinata followed that with a sweet kiss on his lips. He picked up an indignant Alyssa and let her ride on the Hokage's shoulders as people laughed. There was a huge feast being held in the tower to celebrate his coronation as Hokage. He would have really liked to have stayed and enjoyed the good food and company. But as he was already discovering the duties of the Hokage demanded a lot of his time. He stayed for 5 minutes before slipping out with Jiraiya coming with him to a different room in the tower. XXXXXXXXXXX. He stared down at the plans. He went over the numbers again. He was sure it would work. The jutsus he would need were already written down in various scrolls. There were no ways to test his theories, of course. But he had faith that it would work. His will and his vision had brought him to this point. He would not stop now. He would make his dream come true no matter the cost. He heard familiar footsteps approaching. He did not need to look up. What is it? Pain asked. His partner approached his side before answering. She stood there patiently in her black robes with red clouds and with a paper flower in her hair. It is definitely confirmed now. Pain finally looked up from his drawings. Is it? Conan nodded. Namikaze Naruto is definitely alive. What is more, he has been proclaimed the 6th Hokage of Konoha. What of the 5th? Pain asked curiously. She is reported to have died during his rescue. No one seems to know the details of her death. The public is however aware that Naruto no longer possedes the Kyuubi. That's very interesting considering that when we left Tsunade was alive and Naruto was dead. Shrugging, he turned back to his drawings. Well, it may be interesting, but it's not really important. You don't think this is important? Conan asked. No, Pain replied without looking up again. Konoha's new leader has a real reason to hate us. Isn't that deserving of at least a little concern? Naruto was no match for Itachi even with the Kyuubi. What threat can he be now? The forces of Konoha could be a problem, but by the time he even figures out what the true danger is, it will be too late. He is inexperienced and weak. He is far less of a threat to us as Hokage than Tsunade or Jiraiya would be. Conan paused for a bit. Pain. Yes. She had known him her entire life. Without him she would have died long ago. She was devoted to him and to his dream. But she was perhaps the only one he might listen to. Are you sure that it will work with only 8? He looked up at her in surprise. Of course. You once told me that possessing the power of all 9 Biju was the key to controlling their immense chakra. The one tail is gone, I can do nothing about that. But have no fear, I have carefully compensated the jutsus to make up for the loss. The weapon will work, Conan, trust in me. She looked at him with deep concern. You know that I trust you, I always have. But what if you are wrong? I am not, he said calmly. He put a comforting hand on her shoulder. Conan, you know how long this has been my dream. Since we lost everything as kids, I have burned with a desire to make people, all people, understand the futility of war. And the only way to do that is to make war too terrible to be fought any longer. And I will make it happen. He gave her a comforting smile. We have come too far to stop now. I will make this work and I will bring peace to this world the only way possible, with the sword. Trust in me. She slowly nodded. I trust in you, Pain, always. He smiled and nodded back in appreciation. Thank you. She soon left and he was alone again staring at his drawings. 5 down, 3 to go. He muttered to himself. XXXXXXXXXX. Naruto had spent 2 dull hours greeting important dignitaries who had come to attend his coronation. There were foreign lords from almost every land. Not to mention the fire daimyo and his wife, and their little cat too. There were also a dozen cages from ninja villages great and small. He made time to greet and speak to each and every one of them. As he did so, he was careful to keep Jiraiya and Shizune close at hand. Jiraiya being a living legend overawed many of his guests. Whereas Shizune knew many useful facts about each cage and helped him deal with them while appearing to know a great deal about them. He would have dearly liked to have spent his time celebrating with his family and friends. But he didn't dare use a clone for this. At least he had left a clone back at the party, so he would at least have the memories of it later. After a couple hours of playing host, Shizune mercifully informed him he could safely leave without offending anyone. But even then his work was not done. He had arranged for some private meetings in his office. XXXXXXXXXX. He was sitting in the chair that had been his godmother's not very long ago. It was his chair now. His desk, his office, his position. It was already nighttime and from the window he could see multicolored explosions of light in the darkened sky. He sighed. Right now his clone was likely on the roof with his arms wrapped around Hinata as they all watched. That was where he wanted to be now, but his duty required him to be here instead. The door to his office opened and he rose to his feet with a friendly smile as an old man in blue and white robes entered. Kazekage-san, Naruto offered him a bow. Thank you for agreeing to meet with me. Suleiman was careful to return the bow. It is I who thank you, Hokage-san, for the honor you have shown me. Suleiman was painfully aware that Suna was no longer one of the great powers. Yet Naruto had shown him the courtesy due one of the great cages. The respect was greatly appreciated. Naruto motioned for him to sit in the chair in front of the desk and so he did so. What did you wish to speak of, Hokage-san? Naruto sat back down in his own chair. I have had some thoughts about some rather radical changes to the foreign policy of my village. To begin with, I want to make some changes to the treaty that ended the war. Suleiman eyed him warily. This might be bad. If Konoha wanted another pound of flesh, there was nothing Suna could do but submit. Fighting Konoha again was out of the question. What sort of changes? The Kage asked neutrally. Naruto took out a piece of paper and placed it on his desk. According to the terms of surrender, you must pay reparations of 20 million ryu each year for the next 10 years. Your ninja are not permitted to perform any missions outside of the Land of Wind, and you are not permitted to sign any treaties with foreign powers without the permission of Konoha. You have also provided us with hostages. I believe that covers everything. The Kage nodded. Yes, those are the terms we agreed to when we made peace. I want to change them. Naruto said flatly and handed over another piece of paper. This is what I have in mind to replace them with. Suleiman took the paper anxiously and read it. What he read shocked him, and he actually read it again to be sure he had not somehow misunderstood. He looked at the Hokage with real surprise. Why in Kami's name would you want this? This releases us from the conditions of the peace treaty and gives us a chance to become great again one day. He looked at Naruto suspiciously. What is in it for you? I want our villages to be allies. Naruto replied. We already are. No, we're not, Naruto said. It's not a real alliance if you're compelled to it at the end of a sword. The way things are now, you will continue to hate us and wait for a day when you can get revenge. You'll be our allies only as long as you know we are too strong for you to fight. If that should change one day, you will attack us without a second thought. Suleiman slowly nodded. He would give Naruto some credit and talk to him honestly, as one leader to another. That is so, it is the way of the world for the strong to take advantage of the weak. Had we won the war, we would not have treated you gently. Naruto shook his head. But all that leads to is an unending cycle of war and revenge. How can there ever be real peace when one side is always wanting revenge? What would you suggest instead? Suleiman asked. A grand alliance where all member villages are equals and all members are guaranteed security from attack. I want an alliance where we can foster friendship between the villages and resort to war only in defense from outside attack. Friendship. Suleiman could not believe what he was hearing. You expect the villages to become friends? Eventually, yes. Suleiman stared at him. Are you really so naive as to believe that is even remotely possible? Naruto shrugged. Maybe it's a revolutionary idea, but I believe it's the only way to have real peace someday. Suleiman eyed him carefully. You did more than any other single ninja to defeat my village in the war. You killed my predecessor and hundreds of other ninja. After all that, how can you even want real friendship with us? Alyssa is your granddaughter, I believe. Suleiman nodded. She is. Well, I have come to care for her as my imouto. I have a friend named Hiku who was a Miss Nin. He very nearly killed the girl I love and I nearly killed him. But now I consider him one of my closest and dearest friends. So I happen to know for a fact that those who are enemies can become friends one day. And if I have to choose, I will put my faith in friendship over the sword. Interesting sentiment for a ninja, especially for a Kage. Naruto actually smiled at that. Well, one thing I've never been called is ordinary. For the first time a grin appeared on the Kazekage's lips. I believe that. I also believe that you never will be. Well, whatever the case, I am ready to sign your treaty. That's great, but before you do, there's one more thing we need to discuss first. What is that? It's about Alyssa and the other hostages. XXXXXXXXXX. See, he signed it. Naruto showed off the signature with great pride. Jiraiya and Shizune both looked at it. Kid, Jiraiya spoke. There was never any doubt that he would. From his point of view, he only gains. Well, I am very proud of you, Naruto. Shizune said. I think it's wonderful that you are trying to make a lasting peace. Jiraiya frowned, obviously not so sure. Kid, this idea of yours, you know it'll never work, right? Naruto leaned back in his seat. Maybe it will and maybe it won't. But I have to create a world of peace, right? What other choice is there? Jiraiya shrugged. Well, you could always try and make Konoha so strong no one would ever dare challenge her. You mean the Akatsuki method? Naruto frowned. No, I'm not going to try and conquer the world or scare everyone into doing what I want. I won't be like them. If I do end up leading Konoha into a war, it will be to create a greater peace, not just to get power or revenge. Jiraiya looked at his student. Naruto really believed it, and damn if he couldn't make you believe it too. Jiraiya smiled. Well, kid, seeing as there are only two possibilities, I'll give you my full support to try and make this thing real. He chuckled. You know you're going to have a real fun time explaining all this to the council. Naruto just shrugged. It has to be done. I have enough support, I'm sure I'll manage. Shizune looked to the clock on the wall. It is time for your next meeting. Naruto nodded. This would be a long night. XXXXXXXXXX. The Otokage smiled. The Grand Alliance, huh? Well, sure, I'll sign. Suigetsu spoke happily and smiled with all those sharp teeth. After 2 years fighting, he had finally secured the position of Otokage and control of the Sound Village. To be honest, I was surprised to get your invitation to come. I'd be happy to hook up with the strongest village around. Naruto had disliked him immediately. Naruto saw an awful lot of Zabuza in the man. Well, that's great, but there are certain conditions to joining. Like what? First off, no more human experiments. Second, no more curse seals. And finally, no more recruiting people from Fire Country. Naruto answered stiffly. Suigetsu nodded. Sure, all that stuff was Orochimaru's doing. He actually experimented on me, so I got no taste for doing it myself. We don't even have info on the curse seal anymore. Naruto knew that to be true from his previous mission, but didn't want to leave Suigetsu any wriggle room on the subject. And we'll stop grabbing kids from Fire Country. Sujitsu's smile widened. We'll be good little boys and girls. Naruto did not trust him. But if he kept his bargain, he would be treated like any of the members of the alliance. Welcome aboard then. XXXXXXXXXX. The Raikage looked at the piece of paper with a slight grin. You are serious about this? Naruto nodded. I sure am. I already have 4 signatures, as you can see. The Raikage shook his head and handed the paper back to him. You have acquired 4 weak villages that will be nothing more than a burden to you. Kumogakure is a great power and in need of no alliance. He shook his head. This so-called Grand Alliance of yours will not come to anything. Well, I think great things will come from it. The Raikage shrugged, not seeing it as important enough to argue about. Well, my village has no interest in it. Now, was there anything else you wished to discuss? Naruto slowly nodded. As a matter of fact, there is. I wanted to talk about the Two-Tails Jinchuriki, Nyugito. The Raikage frowned. What about her? He asked warily. She will undoubtedly be targeted by the Akatsuki for extraction, just as I was. You should make every effort to protect her. Naruto was surprised to see the man shake his head. She is a ninja of the village hidden in the clouds. She is expected to face danger. I will certainly not coddle her as though she were a helpless child. Every ninja is expected to face danger. Naruto agreed. Not every ninja is expected to face the likes of Uchiha Itachi and other S-rank criminals. She will survive or she will not, but I will not waste resources on her. Naruto saw a look that he was quite familiar with. You hate her, don't you? He asked quietly. She's nothing but a tool to you, and a dangerous one at that. You'd probably be just as happy if she were killed. The Raikage sent him a sharp look. Do not presume to judge me, you have been Hokage for but a day. She is one of your own people. How can you not care about her? Not every village is as soft as Konoha. Casualties are to be expected. The Raikage said simply. Naruto frowned. He could not imagine Sarutobi or his godmother ever being so dismissive about someone's survival. He was absolutely certain that Akatsuki would be coming for her. He was also sure that if special steps were not taken, she would die. Though he had never met her, he felt a kinship for her as someone who had been a Jinchuriki. There was also the more practical matter of needing to foil Akatsuki. I have an idea. XXXXXXXXXXX. Naruto remained at the tower until well past midnight. XXXXXXXXXX. The next morning, Haku was strolling down the hallway towards the stairs as the door to Naruto's room opened. Out stepped a fully dressed Naruto and Hinata in a robe. Good morning, Naruto. Good morning, Hinata-chan. Haku called pleasantly. He knew that Hinata had moved in. He was a bit surprised though to see her coming out of his room. Morning, Haku, Naruto said. Good morning, Hinata said brightly. She leaned over and shared a quick kiss with Naruto. I need to change, then I'll meet you downstairs for breakfast. She hurried over to her room, which was right next to Naruto's. Haku stood there patiently with his friend as they both waited for her. You have a huge smile on your face, Naruto. Naruto chuckled a bit. Well, can you blame me? When I wake up, the very first thing I see is my Hinata-chan. Haku nodded, feeling a bit sad that he had yet to have that experience with Gabriella. You're very lucky. Naruto nodded. A thought then occurred. Hey Haku, remember when you asked me what I would do if the only way I could marry Hinata would be to join the Hyuga clan? Haku nodded. Of course, you told me that you would not marry her. Naruto had one of his huge smiles. Well, I take it back. I know now that I love her too much to ever be without her. So you would marry her even if it meant joining her clan? Haku asked carefully. Yeah, I would, because being with her is worth that sacrifice. But what about your children? Would you want them to be raised in the Hyuga clan with all their rules and stiff behavior? Naruto frowned a bit. He loved Hinata dearly, and had great respect for Hiashi and Neji. But having spent so much time with that clan growing up, he knew the problems with them. They cared too much for tradition and were rigid and formal even behind closed doors. But even so, Naruto nodded. It wouldn't be my first choice. But even if they were, any child with Hinata for a mother would grow up being loved and shown affection. But what if something happened to her? Hiku asked seriously. The way something happened to your father. Naruto thought about that. We are all in danger, Hiku. Death can come for any of us at any time. That was something he really knew. But if I were going to lose my Hinata-chan, then I would want to spend every minute with her that I could. And once she was gone, I would love and take care of my children and make sure they knew just how much I loved them. Hiku listened to his friend's answer and could not think of anything to add. A couple minutes later, Hinata came out of her room dressed and ready. She took Naruto's hand and together the three of them went downstairs to get breakfast. XXXXXXXXXXX. Kasen, could you and Alyssa stop by the tower at noon today? There is something I want to take care of and then we can all have lunch. His mother smiled knowing what her son had in mind. She looked over to the little girl. Would you like that, Alyssa-chan? The girl nodded eagerly. Hi, Kasen. XXXXXXXXXX. When noon rolled around, Kushina and Alyssa were ushered into the Hokage's office. When they entered, both Naruto and the Kazekage stood to greet them. Hello, Alyssa, Suleiman greeted his granddaughter politely with a small grin. Oh gee, Alyssa said happily and hurried over to him. He bent down and gave the girl a small hug. Have you been well treated, Alyssa? The girl nodded her head up and down. Oh yes, grandfather. She smiled over at Kushina and Naruto. They don't treat me as a hostage but like family. She is my mother and he is my big brother. Her birth mother had died when she was 2. Her father had been killed fighting in Rain Country when she was 4. She had been raised by an aunt and uncle after that, surrounded by the couple's children. She was never alone and she was not unloved. But whether by purpose or not, she was never as close to her aunt and uncle as their birth children were. So when she had come to Konoha, she had been very happy to have Kushina treat her like daughter. Imoudo, Naruto spoke up. You are here today because I have decided to release the hostages from Suna. She sent her niece in a look of fear and deep hurt. You're sending me away. She ran from her grandfather back to Kushina and grabbed onto her. Please, mother. I want to stay here with you and everyone else. Kushina quickly gave her daughter a comforting hug. No one is sending you away, dear. That's right. Naruto came out from behind his desk. She hadn't given him a chance to finish what he was saying. What I was going to tell you was that you could return to Suna or you could stay here and be adopted into the family. Naruto gave his Imoudo a warm smile. You won't be our guest anymore, but you will legally be my sister, Namikaze Alyssa. Really? She looked up between her mother and brother. I'll really be in the family. Honey, you are already family to us. Kushina said as she rubbed her daughter's back. This will just make official what has been true for a long time now. Naruto grinned. Well, that's if you want to stay here with us. Yes, I do. More than anything, niece and I want to stay here with you and Kasen. Then that is what will happen. Kushina said and hugged her tight. XXXXXXXXXXX. No, Tamari said firmly. Suleiman frowned. Tamari, you have a responsibility to both your clan and village. She held up her left hand to display for him a diamond ring. I also have one to my future husband. I was willing to sacrifice everything for Suna. But now I have new loyalties. I love Shikamaru and Yoshino, I am not leaving them. Konoha is home now. She spoke firmly. Suleiman shook his head sadly. This is the end of the Sabaku line. Can you live with that? She nodded without hesitation. After all the misery the Sabaku name has caused, I am glad to let it vanish forever. XXXXXXXXXXX. At 6 that evening, Naruto had called for another meeting of the council. There he presented to them a fait accompli. He had a treaty with the signatures of the cages of sand, grass, waterfall, sound, star, river, and tea. He also presented them with a pair of chests each filled with 100 million ryu. Along with the Shodai's necklace, the scroll with the chests had been in Naruto's possession the entire time. So, with the 200 million ryu that was retrieved on the mission to Torike, the village will not lose any income from releasing Suna from her obligations. Now instead of a vengeful Suna, we have a willing ally. Suna, along with the other 6 villages that have agreed to join us, are the beginning of what I hope will eventually be an alliance that will include every last ninja village. Naruto sat back down, very pleased with all he had accomplished so quickly. He had no sooner sat than Danzo was on his feet, furious. Are you insane? He demanded. Watch your mouth. Kushina barked. You release Suna from her obligations and give her free rein to become a threat again. I'm giving them the chance to become a strong friend to us. Naruto said calmly. He sort of wished Jiraiya was there to intimidate them a little. But he had already left to gather information. They were the first to join the Grand Alliance. Grand Alliance. Danzo openly mocked. All you have done is committed us to defend 6 weaklings should they be attacked. Where is the advantage to Konoha? How does this strengthen us? We are already acknowledged the strongest of all the ninja villages. And unlike you, Danzo, I believe that having friends in this world will only make us stronger. Friends. Danzo curled his lip in open contempt. There is no such thing among the ninjas of different villages. If you trust others, they will only betray you one day. Just as Suna betrayed us. Naruto shook his head. Not if they have more to gain by being our friends. This alliance will guarantee their territory and give them security. I think it is our best chance for a lasting peace. Danzo continued to argue bitterly against it, but Naruto had too much support on the council for there to be any doubt of the outcome. Especially with 200 million Ryu just sitting there on the table. Naruto kept a careful eye on Ryuki. He had expected Danzo's opposition. He had not expected the Uchiha clan head to quietly sit there and say nothing. The fact that he voted for approving the alliance was an even greater surprise. The treaty was officially ratified by the council and the Grand Alliance came into being. XXXXXXXXXX. 8 days later. Shizune knocked on his door. She popped her head in. She is here. Naruto nodded. He'd expected her arrival today, so he was actually in his office instead of his clones. Send her in. An attractive blonde kunoichi entered and bowed to him. She stood up and gave him a calm look. She wore her cloud-hid eye around her forehead. I am Niyugito of the village hidden within the clouds. I was ordered to report to you about a long-term mission. Naruto stood up and returned her bow. I am very glad to meet you, Yugito. I hope we can become good friends. He saw her eyebrows quirk for just a second before the calm mask returned. She obviously didn't know what to make of the Hokage of Konoha saying that to her. Well, I suppose that is possible. She said neutrally. Can you please inform me of who my client is and what the mission is? Naruto smiled. I am your client. I gave the Raikage 5 million Ryu of my family's money to hire you as a bodyguard for a full year. She stared at him. A year. Welcome to Konoha. 76. Test day. The following morning, as he and Hinata went downstairs to eat, Yugito was already there dressed and waiting. Naruto sent her a big and friendly smile. Good morning, Yugito-chan, he said. Did you sleep well, Yugito-chan? Hinata asked. She couldn't help but look at them both a bit curiously. She was a foreign ninja and a stranger, and they were both calling her Chan, as though they were old friends. No one called her Chan. Well, it was all part of the job, she supposed. After just one day, this was obviously going to be a strange experience. She screwed on a smile. I slept well, thank you. Good morning to you, Hinata, and to you, Hokage-san. Naruto sent her a playful frown. Oh, you're calling Hinata by just her name but not me. He pretended to pout. I feel left out. Is he really a Kage? She wondered. The Raikage always demanded respect from those who served him. Hokage-san, while I am here on this mission, I am your obedient servant. To address you simply by name would be disrespectful. He shook his head slightly but didn't try to argue with her. Even after all these years, Haku still called his mom Kushina-sama. I am very sorry about what happened last night. I should have warned you. I honestly didn't think you would be ambushed so quickly. Mention of that embarrassed her. That is quite all right, Hokage-san. A ninja must be prepared at all times, and I let my guard down. Well, if it makes you feel any better, everyone who lives here has been attacked like that. I myself have gone through it several times. Really? Yugito said in surprise. He nodded. Hinata gave her a warm smile. If it helps, I think you looked very nice in braids and pink ribbon. XXXXXXXXXX. She found breakfast to be incredibly uncomfortable and difficult to deal with. That was not because the food was bad, it was excellent and hot. It was not because people were staring at her and making snide comments that she was used to. It was not even because she was being ignored and treated as though she didn't exist that she was also used to. No, what made breakfast so hard to deal with was that everyone was friendly and talked to her as an old friend rather than as hired help. It was a unique experience and not something she had expected. It was a large and rather loud gathering as all the people who lived there sat around a big table and talked and laughed as they ate. She found it hard to believe that Kushina, the Hokage's mother and the actual Namikaze clan head, insisted on doing the cooking. In her experience, clan heads did not do that. She wondered if this was how all the clans in Konoha were or if this was simply an eccentric family. She saw her nemesis skip into the dining room and flash her a very big smile. Yugito couldn't help but send the little 11-year-old a genuine smile back. Despite the horrors of last night, you could not stay angry at the little girl. As she watched, Alyssa skipped over to where the Hokage was sitting and gave him a big hug. Neeson, there's something I want to ask you. Alyssa spoke up. Yes, Alyssa-chan. Can I be a ninja? As though drawn by a magnet, Kushina came out of the kitchen and spoke before her son had a chance to. Alyssa, you want to be a kunoichi? Her little daughter nodded. I thought you wanted to be a hairdresser. Well, Kasen, that was when I was a hostage and I wasn't allowed to be a ninja or use weapons. Now that I'm a part of the family, I want to be a ninja like you and Neeson and everyone else. Kushina did not look happy at this news. Anko strolled in wearing nothing but an oversized shirt. Well, that's great. I'll be happy to help you. You stay out of this. Kushina snapped. Alyssa looked up at her mother in surprise. Is there something wrong, Kasen? Kushina smiled down at the girl. Alyssa honey, you don't have to be a ninja to a part of this family. We will love you just as much whether you are one or not. I know that mother, Alyssa replied, but I really want to be a ninja like you and Neeson. I want to go on missions with my team and see new places, and protect the village just like you do. Kushina slowly nodded, but looked disappointed. In her life she had been a part of 2 ninja clans and through the years had lost many of the people she loved. She had attended her husband's funeral and the funerals of many of her kin. Not long ago she had looked down at her son's lifeless body and then seen her close friend die in front of her. She did not want Alyssa becoming a ninja as well. Honey, being a ninja is very, very dangerous. You know that the Lady Tsunade died not too long ago. All of us who are ninja live dangerous lives and can die at any time. Are you sure you wouldn't be happier being a hairdresser or maybe a teacher? Alyssa crossed her arms and shook her head. No mother, I want to be ninja. I know that it's dangerous, but that is what makes you all so brave. She looked about the room. Most everyone was present and they were nearly all ninja or retired ninja. You protect others and provide for the village. You face dangers and challenges and have lives filled with adventure. That's what I want. I want to live an amazing life. I would never be happy just staying here my whole life while others were doing really important things. She gave her mother a serious look. I want to be just like you and my big brother. Kushina saw that Alyssa really meant it. She let out a sigh and nodded. All right honey, if it's what you truly want. Alyssa-chan, Naruto asked. You're 11, which means you've missed out on 3 years of the academy. Would you like to enroll for 1 year? If you do that you'll have to pass an entrance test to make sure you know everything a 4th-year student should. Alyssa looked a bit surprised but excited by the prospect. I'd like that. What do I need to know? You'll need to be able to mold chakra, have basic taijutsu, some weapons skills with shuriken and kunai, know math codes, the rules of shinobi conduct, science, history, and be able to pass a physical endurance test. Naruto stated. She looked a little worried at the length of his list. That sounds like a lot. How long do I have to learn all that? Until the beginning of September. Kushina answered. So since it's May now you have a little less than 4 months. She saw her daughter look a bit panicked. It's not as bad as it sounds. That's right Alyssa-chan. Hinata spoke. The academy requirements are not that high. I am sure if you work hard that you can reach your goal. Haku nodded and spoke as well. You've already received an excellent education so the academics should be no problem for you. But that still leaves molding chakra and weapons and endurance. Alyssa said. She quickly turned to her mother and brother. Will you teach me? Of course we will, Kushina answered. But you have to remember Alyssa that Naruto and I have other duties as well. We will give you training when we can. Alyssa looked crushed. But I think everyone here will be happy to help you. There were nods all around. Yugito suddenly caught herself, she'd been nodding too. What is wrong with me? Training this little girl is no part of my mission. Shinzo said. That's right. Kushina, Naruto, Hinata, Haku, and Anko are all active duty ninja and have responsibilities. But uncle and I are both retired. We'll both be happy to give you plenty of training and the others will too when they can. Naruto grinned to see how happy Alyssa was. Over the years of course she had watched as people trained around her, but she had never done it herself. He chuckled knowing his little sister was in for quite an experience. Well, on the bright side, after more than 3 months of Uzumaki training methods the academy will be a breeze for her like it was for me. XXXXXXXXXX. After breakfast Kushina and Haku went off to train. Hinata went to the hospital to work as a medic nin. Anko left for her own duties while Shinzo and Seishu began teaching Alyssa the basics. Naruto meanwhile created 5 shadow clones and sent them off to the tower. They were dressed in the Hokage robes and hat. As soon as they were gone the original removed his robes to reveal the black and red bodysuit beneath. He and Yugito headed not to the tower but to one of the training grounds. XXXXXXXXXX. Why are we at a training ground Hokage-san? Yugito asked. Well, there's something I've been putting off that I really need to do. He looked at her. You know that I was the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi. She nodded. Yes. Are you also aware that I no longer am? She again nodded. Well, after having spent my entire life as a demon container, having the Kyuubi taken out of me has definitely been both a blessing and a curse. I no longer have to worry about losing control of it if I get too angry, and people in general seem easier to deal with now. But the downside is I've lost not only a lot of chakra capacity but also powerful abilities including an ultimate defense. Losing the red chakra cloak and the red chakra clones was definitely a major change. I need to see exactly how much strength I've lost and how much I still have. He took out a scroll. With a puff of smoke it became several mats, each containing dozens of kunai. Taking one he carefully tossed it to Yugito. There, that one is for you. Please keep it on you at all times. She caught the kunai and looked closely at it. It 3 prongs and formula carved into the handle. She suddenly gasped as she recognized what it was. Is this one of the tri-kunai the yellow flash used with his famous jutsu? That's right, Naruto answered, he tossing the rest of the kunai out into the training ground at random. I was able to relearn my father's prized jutsu. So long as you have that with you, I can reach you at any time no matter where you are. She held the trikunai in both hands as though it were a sleeping cobra. While I appreciate this, Hokage-san, I must tell you that even though I am in your employ as a Cloud Nin, I am honor-bound to pass this formula on to my village. Here, he tossed her a second kunai. You can send that to your raikage with my compliments. She stared at him as he continued to throw out more trikunai. Can you really be so cavalier about the secrets of so powerful a jutsu? He suddenly stopped and began laughing. He turned around to look at her. If it were that easy, every ninja from here to Iowa would know the Hiraishin. The formula you see there is maybe 1% of the jutsu. Knowing it is worthless if you don't have the other 99%. He gave her an embarrassed grin and rubbed the back of his head. I am the only one to have ever figured out how to use my father's jutsu. Even that supposed genius Orochimaru could never solve it. I studied it for years, since I was an academy student. Then over a 2.5-year period I studied it for a few hours every single night until I was finally able to solve it. So I'm really not worried about anyone getting that formula. She watched as he tossed out the rest of the trikunai. Then he disappeared in a yellow flash. When he reappeared just a few seconds later, he was holding all the trikunai in his arms. Her face remained vacant while inside she felt a whole new respect for him. Upon meeting him, he'd kept on smiling and making jokes and trying to make her feel comfortable. He did not behave like a cage in her opinion. She had begun wondering if he'd been made Hokage simply because he was the Yellow Flash's son. But he really could work the Hiraishin. Anyone who can master that jutsu really must be a genius. Maybe there's more to him than meets the eye. I need to remember to look underneath the underneath. XXXXXXXXXX. Throughout the morning he practiced various jutsus. Most of them were wind-based, she noticed, but he used a few of all the elements. He certainly had a very wide range of them. After making a river of earth flow past, he frowned and stood there a while. Is something wrong? Yugito asked politely. I'm not as strong as I used to be, he said quietly. My wind jutsus are still not too bad. But my earth, fire, and water jutsus are a lot weaker than they used to be. He had used no lightning jutsus. She looked at him in surprise. They certainly seem powerful enough to me. You're just trying to be nice, he said dismissively. No, Yugito said flatly. I never do that, not even for my employers or captains. Naruto sighed. Well, there is one tiny upside. My chakra control has gotten way better. He stood there for a moment and seemed to think about something. I wonder. He held out his right hand and balled it into a fist. Instantly it was surrounded by chakra. He slammed his fist into the ground. The earth shook and she was actually forced to leap back as it felt like an earthquake. When the shaking passed, she was stunned to see a crater about 20 yards deep and about 30 yards wide. She was a Jinchuriki, but even she found that display of raw power impressive. Wow, what freakish strength. I would have hated to see what he could do with the Kyuubi. Well, that's not too bad, he muttered. Maybe I'll have Hinata teach me some medical jutsus. He held out an open palm and began to gather chakra into a sphere. He was not surprised to find that the Rasengan was also less powerful than it used to be. He guessed he could make one a little stronger than Jiraiya's. He let the chakra go without bothering with using a target. It was easy for him to judge just how much power one of his Rasengans had. He came to a painful decision. He would no longer use the Rasen Shuriken except in life or death situations. He had finally mastered adding a wind element to the Rasengan and succeeded in creating a jutsu so lethal it destroyed on a cellular level. If he hit someone with it, that person was not only dead but probably unrecognizable. But there was a drawback: if he used it more than once a day, it caused him severe pain and bodily harm that was slow to heal. When that had happened, Jiraiya had immediately told him to never use it again, not even in practice. Naruto had thought he would need it at some point, but now he wasn't so sure. With his healing power not what it was, he didn't know how much damage the Rasen Shuriken might do to him. It would be a last option for a life and death fight. Well, that leaves me one more thing to test. He formed the oh so familiar hand signs. Kage Bushin no Jutsu. She saw the air all around them fill with smoke. When it cleared, she was surrounded by hundreds of Narutos. The Naruto at the very center began shaking. She quickly caught him before he fell to the ground. Hokage-san, are you all right? Yugito asked. He was huffing and did not seem able to stand at the moment. 400, he wheezed. 400, Yugito asked. Is that how many shadow clones you made? He nodded as he continued to catch his breath. This is my limit. Yugito nodded. It's very impressive. No, it's not, he replied. I used to be able to make 2,000. She looked at him. Can anyone else in your village make even half this many? He looked at her in surprise. No, but it's nothing compared to what I used to be able to do. She nodded as she continued to hold him up. Hi Hokage-san, you no longer have the Kyuubi's chakra, which means you'll have to settle for just being the most powerful ninja in your village by miles instead of by hundreds of miles. She gave him a rather sharp look. I can only guess what you were like before, but from what I can see, you are definitely still S ranked, and I doubt there are many ninjas out there that would have a chance against you. You are a powerful and respected ninja with a family who loves you and a village that honors you. If you really miss having a demon inside you, let's trade. Give me your powers and your family, and I'll gladly give you the nibby. Naruto looked up at her in surprise at the outburst. She began to blush and nodded her head in apology. Forgive me, Hokage-san. That was disrespectful, I apologize. Naruto slowly got his legs under him again and stood on his own. That's all right. You know you can say whatever you like around me. She shook her head. No, Hokage-san, it is not all right for me to speak in such a way either to my employer or to a cage. Naruto smiled at her. It's okay, Yugito-chan, I know I act like a baka at times. You're allowed to tell me so. She stared at him. For such a powerful ninja who had to be genius, he sounded like a naive child a lot of the time. The clones disappeared with a long series of pops. Come on, Yugito-chan, let's get to the tower. I have a bunch of meetings this afternoon, and if I'm late, Aunt Shizune will be mad. Slowly nodding, she followed him. Hi, Hokage-san. 77. Different kisses. How much do you know of the Akatsuki? How much do you know of the Akatsuki? Naruto asked her on the way to the tower. Never heard of them, Yugito replied. That drew a surprised look. They had been actively seeking Biju and Jinchuriki for some time now. He knew for a fact that Jiraiya had sent a warning to the Cloud Village more than 2 years ago. Obviously, that information had not been shared with the person it most affected. Akatsuki is an elite criminal organization made up of S and a rank missing nins. Among their members, we've confirmed Uchiha Itachi, Yakushi Kabuto, Deidara, Sasori, and before his execution Hoshigaki Kisame. We also know that their leader is an individual by the name of Pain. Unfortunately, all we really know about him is that he is a former Rain ninja powerful enough to easily defeat Itachi, which makes him rather scary. I've heard of Itachi, and the others except for Pain are all in the bingo book. They sound like a very dangerous organization. Oh, believe me, they are. And their goal right now is to collect the chakra of all the world's Biju. He paused for a moment to return the friendly greetings being offered him on the street. He wasn't sure if it was because he was Hokage or because it was now known he no longer possessed the Kyuubi, but the whole village had embraced him again. It was like it had been after the battle with Sound and Sand. Yugito did not fail to notice the way people would wave to him or call out a greeting to have it returned by Naruto. In the village hidden among the clouds, no one below the rank of council member would have dared to do that. Were they the ones who attacked you? She asked. That's right. She was not stupid and could see where the path led. You expect them to come after me eventually, don't you? She did not sound particularly worried. Yes, it's only a matter of time. She shrugged. Well, whoever they send, I'm sure I'll be able to handle it. Naruto came to a stop, bringing her up short. He turned to her. I used to think the same damn thing. I was wrong. He got walking again, and so did she. You're using me, aren't you? She asked quietly without any resentment. The Akatsuki are your enemy, and you know they'll come for me eventually. He shook his head. I am not using anyone. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. He sent her a big grin. See, we really can be friends. XXXXXXXXXX. At the tower, she remained patiently outside his office door as he conducted meetings and took care of business. Including one unexpected meeting. XXXXXXXXXX. Naruto was very careful to treat his guest with complete courtesy. He also kept a friendly and open smile on his face. I thank you for meeting with me today. Uchiha Ryuki spoke with an uncharacteristic grin. No problem at all, Naruto replied pleasantly. I did attempt to meet with you prior to my coronation, but somehow you were never available. Well, unfortunately, I was very busy, Ryuki explained. Every other council member made time to meet with me, even Danzo. Naruto pointed out in a cheerful way. Well, I have made time now. Ryuki did not let his happy demeanor slip. And was there anything in particular you wanted to talk about? Ryuki nodded. Essentially, I wanted to inform you that due to the fundamental change that has taken place within you, that I hope our relationship can be improved. His smile took on some real humor. By fundamental change within me, I assume you mean the fact I don't have the Kyuubi anymore. Naruto liked seeing the man look just a bit uncomfortable at the mention of the Kyuubi. Well, yes. Ryuki had hoped to avoid anything specific. Naruto chuckled. You can say Kyuubi, it won't offend me, I promise you. Here, Kyuubi, 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 see. Ryuki nodded, certain Naruto was mentioning the demon's name solely to annoy him. He nevertheless kept a firm hold on his lighthearted expression. Well, now that the Kyuubi is no longer in your possession, I thought it would be good to inform you that the entire Uchiha clan is now firmly behind you and bears you absolutely no ill will. Naruto lifted a single eyebrow. So you had ill will for me before? Ryuki's smile slipped for just a second. Naruto had no trouble spotting the hostility that lay underneath. Perhaps there were some negative feelings before you became Hokage. Now of course you have our loyal support. The Uchiha clan has always been the most powerful clan in Konoha, and I merely wanted to assure you that you could trust in us. Naruto carefully nodded and decided not to question the statement of the Uchiha clan being the most powerful. He preferred commenting on something else. Of course I trust the Uchiha clan. Just as I trust every loyal clan in this village to obey my lawful orders. He let his smile sharpen just a bit. Never mind the fact that 3 members of your clan have tried to kill me. That actually caught Ryuki by surprise. Partly because bringing up such unpleasant facts was unusual for these sort of meetings, and partly for another reason. 3. I am aware of the unfortunate events surrounding Itachi and Sasuke, who were both my nephews. I trust you will not hold the entire clan responsible for the actions of one man who murdered his own father, my brother, before betraying his village. Or one who went insane and attacked you after murdering his own girlfriend. Who is the third? Their father, your brother, Fugaku. My mother has told me all about how he was demanding my death the day after I was born. Surely you cannot blame him for that. It was the day after the Kyuubi's attack and the Uchihas had suffered many losses. You must realize that what he proposed was entirely reasonable given the circumstances. Naruto's smile vanished. A lot of people in this village thought wanting to kill me when I was a helpless child was reasonable. So far as I am concerned, there is no justification for killing a baby. Their talk came to an immediate halt, smothered by an embarrassing silence. Ryuki slowly stood. He carefully offered Naruto a very deep bow. You are right, of course, Hokage-sama. There is no excuse for such a thing, and I apologize to you on behalf of my clan. This is not how I wished our meeting to go. Perhaps it would be best if I were to simply go. But Naruto stood up well, and gave the man a bow of his own. No, Ryuki-san, that was rude of me to say and I apologize. Please sit and let us continue. Would you like some tea brought in? Ryuki sat down and they both drank some hot tea as they talked about pleasant and meaningless subjects for the next 20 minutes. This was essentially what the meeting was supposed to have been like. Just an opportunity to build goodwill without trying to talk about politics or anything too serious. Before the end of their talk though, Naruto did bring up one particular subject. I think you should know that I intend to kill Itachi and Kabuto. Not because they are Akatsuki or because they attacked me, but because they betrayed their village. Ryuki nodded. I wish you the best of luck in killing Itachi especially. He murdered his father and his existence is a mark of shame to my clan. Naruto nodded. I am very glad you feel that way. So far as I am concerned, anyone who betrays me or this village will get absolutely no mercy from me no matter what clan they might belong to. And that is a promise. Ryuki smiled and nodded his agreement. The hidden message within those words was obvious, but he carefully pretended not to notice. XXXXXXXXXX. When Naruto returned home with Yugito in tow, he was greeted at the door by his mother. There's dinner on the table, honey. Thanks, Mom. He quickly removed the Hokage cloak and hat. Being the Hokage was great, but he also loved just coming home to be surrounded by the people who were family to him. He looked about as he headed for the kitchen. Where's Alyssa? I was expecting to hear all about her first day of training. Kushina chuckled. The poor dear was exhausted. She's already asleep in bed. Naruto smiled. Well, I suppose I should have expected that. Uzumaki training techniques aren't exactly easy to endure. That's what makes them effective. Kushina said. So how was work? Anything you can share? He stopped on the way to the kitchen and looked around to make sure no one else was near. Kushina was a bit surprised at her son's caution. I had a meeting with Ryuki today, he said in a low voice. Did he threaten you or make demands about something? To her surprise, Naruto shook his head. No, he basically came to make nice and chat, sort of like the fire daimyo's wife likes to do. His message was, trust me. Kushina was frowning instantly. Do you trust him? Not for a second. Naruto finally headed into the kitchen. XXXXXXXXXX. The following day, Kushina took her squad out on a B rank retrieval mission to Tea Country. It was not too difficult, and 4 days after leaving they returned to Konoha. Haku asked Gabriella to have dinner with him, but she declined, preferring to just head straight home. Watching her leave, Haku sighed. Things between them were getting more and more stressful as the days slipped past. They both knew about her deadline and the pressure was building. Nothing had changed, he loved her, and she loved him. She was determined to lead the Uchiha clan. He was determined to found a new clan with a spirit much like the Namikazes. Sometimes the growing tension led to moments of just spontaneous and amazing sex as they both grabbed onto each other and refused to let go. Other times she could be cold and treat him almost like a stranger. If you're lost, I think the way home is down that way. Tayuya helpfully pointed towards the Namikaze estates. Haku looked over to his teammate and smiled. They were close and he really liked her a great deal. Over the years he learned enough about women to understand that she liked him as well, as perhaps more than a friend. Had he never Gabriella, he might have cared for Tayuya in that way. As it was, his heart was spoken for. Kushina had already headed home, so it was now just the two of them. Would you like to get something to eat? Tayuya was surprised by the request, normally she only got invited if Gabriella or Kushina were there as well. She smiled. You paying? Sure. All right. She playfully put her arm around his. XXXXXXXXXXX. They'd had a good meal that had even included a little sake. Hiku usually didn't drink, but when Tayuya ordered sake for herself, she was able to guilt him into drinking so that she wasn't doing it alone. They laughed and talked about the mission and about the sights on the way there and back. That was one of the joys of being ninja, you got to see things and have new experiences. When dinner was over, Haku naturally offered to walk Tayuya back to her apartment. When they got there, she had invited him to come up and talk for a bit more. She always invited him and he always no. Except for this time. XXXXXXXXXXX. Sitting on her couch next to her, he listened as she played her flute for him. The sad tune reminded him of home just as it always did. But now it was reminding him of Gabriella too. Reminding him that things were not as they should have been. When did I start connecting Gabriella to the tragedies in my life? He didn't like that thought at all. They loved each other. Why wasn't that enough? It was enough for Naruto and Hinata. Then he thought about his own parents. They had loved each other too, and they had both loved him as well. Even after all this time, he could remember being happy surrounded by his parents' love. But in the end, their love had ended in tragedy because it had not been strong enough to withstand the forces of an uncaring world. He suddenly felt a gentle hand touching his cheek and carefully turning his face towards Tayuya's. She had stopped playing and was sitting very close to him. Where are you? She asked in a whisper. I see in your eyes that you're a million miles away. I want you right here. She looked nervous and afraid. I'm sorry, I was just thinking. She nodded. You were thinking about sad things, right? He felt her other hand caress his other cheek. You always think about sad things when I play for you. I'm sorry. He was feeling very warm. He thought it was the sake, but it might have been because she was so close to him. Don't be, she spoke softly. I'm glad my music makes you feel even if the feeling is sadness. I am just very glad that you are here with me now. Her face moved forward just a little and her lips pressed against his. She could feel his surprise, feel him stiffen for just a second. But then he relaxed and she could feel him return her kiss. He was kissing her back. She shut her eyes and let herself be immersed by the pleasure of this feeling. He was kissing her and he could feel his pleasure flowing through him. She had never ever been so happy in her life. He shut his eyes and kissed her. Her kiss was warm and sweet. It was comfort. He could just relax and give in to the simple pleasure of her lips touching his. She tasted wonderful to him, though it was different than the way Gabriella tasted when he kissed her. As soon as he thought of Gabriella, he opened his eyes again and carefully pulled away from Tayuya. The moment was over. He quickly got up from the couch. I'm sorry, I shouldn't be here. He sounded guilty. Tayuya nodded, she understood. He felt something for her, but not enough. Hiku, my door will always be open for you. If you ever need me for anything at all, just come by. I promise I will never shut you out or turn away from you. She looked into his eyes. Anything you should ever want from me, just ask and I will give it to you gladly. She saw his face begin to blush and she was sure he understood just what she was offering. I have to go, I'm sorry. Hiku left as quickly as he could. XXXXXXXXXX. If Kushina suspected, she did not reveal a hint of it either to Hiku or Gabriella. Their usual training session went about as well as it normally did. At the end of training, Hiku left quickly with Kushina. Gabriella was a bit disappointed as she had decided to have dinner with him if he had asked. She sighed and got ready to go back to the compound. Maybe Dad would want to do some extra training with her today. You're a stupid bitch. Gabriella froze, and slowly turned around to stare at Tayuya, who was just standing there about 10 feet away. What did you say to me? I called you a stupid bitch. Tayuya repeated. The most amazing boy in the world loves you and you're ready to just walk away from him so you can rule over your brainless clan. So as far as I'm concerned, that makes you one hell of a stupid bitch. Who the hell are you to judge me? She demanded. What the hell would you know about being part of a family or of a clan? I have responsibilities that you know nothing about. Yeah, you're F hash and king right about that. I don't know S hash and T about having a real family or about being an almighty Uchiha princess. I just know that if Hiku cared about me even half as much as he cares about you, I'd hold on to him and never let him go. With that, the girl disappeared in a swirl of wind. Gabriella was furious, and more than a little worried by what had just been said. She loved Hiku, more than she had ever thought she could. He made her happy and the thought of being with him for always filled her with raw joy. But whether she liked it or not, she had obligations that she could not ignore. XXXXXXXXXX. Hiku was very surprised when Gabriella showed up at the mansion after their training session and asked to talk to him alone. He brought her up to his room and was nervously preparing to hear an angry accusation about what he had done the previous night. But rather than start yelling at him, Gabriella had put her arms around him and begun kissing him. He put his own arms around her and, though a bit confused, gladly returned her affection. As he kissed her, Hiku knew that this was right. In the moments when they were actually together, there was no sadness or regret. Those thoughts only came in the long hours they spent apart. Finally, she pulled her lips from his. He looked down at her and could only smile. What was that for? You know I love you, right? Gabriella asked fearfully. He looked at her in obvious surprise. Of course, and I love you. Haku, even if things don't work out between us, I need you to know it's not because I don't love you. If it were just you and me, I would marry you tomorrow. Haku nodded and kissed her. I know that. She squeezed him tight and pressed her face into his neck. After a moment, she turned her face up to him and there was a naughty little smile there that he recognized. Are the walls here pretty thick? He could see she was beginning to undo her jacket. He began to smile as his heartbeat began to pick up. Actually, they're very thick. They're almost soundproof. Really? Gabriella let her jacket fall to the floor as they began kissing and removing their clothes. XXXXXXXXXX. When Gabriella left a couple hours later, Kushina was by the front door smiling at her. Being in a generous mood, Kushina did not say anything as her student left. It was quite enough to have seen Gabriella blush as she fled. 78. A little house cat. From a hidden alcove he looked out upon his village. It was raining, of course, it was always raining. He loved his village. Even after all the war and death and misery he had been forced to endure, he still loved it and its people. It was for them, the helpless ones, the innocents, the orphaned, that he had struggled so hard and long, fought so bitterly to gain power. He hated war. All his fellow Akatsuki members, save Conan, would have been shocked to learn that, but it was true. Rain Country had been a battleground throughout the Third Great Ninja War. He had seen at first hand the brutality and pointlessness of war. It never solved anything, there was always another enemy, there was always more reason to fight. He wanted to show the world how pointless it was. He wanted to give the world, but especially his own people, the blessings of peace. He was off to a good start. A year and a half ago he'd finally felt confident enough in his strength to make his move. He had killed the legendary Hanzo and supplanted him as ruler. Then he had killed all of Hanzo's family. He killed all of Hanzo's friends. He killed every last person who had ever worked with or supported Hanzo. He let them all know that a new age had begun and that there would be no going back to the old. He had finally brought peace to his village. With his power he watched over them like a benevolent god. No one saw him, no one knew where he resided, but they all knew he was real enough and they obeyed him without question. He nodded to himself, it was good, he was pleased with what he'd done here. He intended to give the blessings of his peace to the whole world. Conan quietly approached him. He turned to face her. She was his one and only dear friend. She was also his messenger, and to the people of the village hidden in the rain she was an angel. The one who brought the words of their hidden god down to the people. We may have a problem. Conan informed him directly. What sort of problem? Pain inquired. It seems Naruto has hired Yugito to act as a bodyguard. She is in Konoha with him now under constant Anbu surveillance. Pain was silent for a moment as he digested this information. I see. Well, that will make things more interesting. What do you want to do about this? Conan asked. Nothing. He shrugged. For the time being we will leave the two tails be. We will concentrate on harvesting the other two first. The Nibi can wait, for now. Conan nodded and left him. He returned to looking out at the rain. That was not a bad move, Rokudaime Hokage, but all you can do is delay me for a bit. Nothing will stop me from giving this world peace. XXXXXXXXXXX. Naruto's first month as Hokage went by fairly smoothly. No unexpected crisis erupted, no major problems took place. During this time though a few interesting developments did occur. XXXXXXXXXX. Naruto, I need to ask a favor. Shikamaru said. I kind of guessed you did when you went to the trouble of coming here. They were in the Namikaze private library where Naruto and some clones were hard at work. So what is it? Temari wants you to marry us. Naruto immediately chuckled. I'm flattered, but I'm sure Hinata would object and I prefer you and Temari as just friends. Shikamaru needed a second, then frowned. You're being troublesome. Shikamaru, with you everything is troublesome. Look Naruto, since you're the Hokage now Temari really wants you to be the one to marry us. Well, knowing Temari, I'm guessing she's probably pretty adamant about it and you'll be in trouble if I don't agree. An evil look came into Naruto's eyes. Pretty much. Shikamaru did not like the way his friend was looking at him. You two are getting married on October 1st, right? Naruto had already gotten his wedding invitation. Yeah, it's the first available Saturday after I turn 16. It's the soonest I can marry her. Naruto let out a melodramatic sigh. I don't know Shikamaru. I mean performing a wedding. It sounds awfully troublesome. It was kind of funny seeing Shikamaru squirm a bit. Naruto, do you want her to kill me? Shikamaru sounded just a little worried. Well, he rubbed his chin trying to look thoughtful. I suppose if my chief advisor were the one getting married then I really couldn't say no. Hey, I thought I was your best friend. Actually Shika, I still think of Hinata as my best friend. Shikamaru took on a surly look. I've told you before that I don't want the job. It's way too much responsibility. You would get to spend more time in the village. Naruto pointed out. You wouldn't have very many troublesome missions. Being chief advisor would be troublesome. I'd have responsibilities and people would actually come looking for me for advice, not just you. Man, that would be a drag. Naruto shrugged and got back to studying the scroll in front of him. Oh well, I'll get you a nice present when I show up with Hinata as a guest. Shikamaru stood there for about 5 minutes trying to seem imposing as Naruto ignored him. Finally, Shikamaru let out a defeated sigh. Fine, I'll do it. Naruto looked up and smiled. Well then, I'll be happy to perform the ceremony. XXXXXXXXXX. Sunisan, they finally let you out of the hospital. Kakashi nodded, feeling a bit embarrassed. He'd been laid up for 3 whole weeks. Yeah, I'm glad to finally get back on my feet. So does that mean you can safely use the Sharingan again? Naruto asked. Kakashi gave him a suspicious glance. For short periods, yes. Perfect, Naruto said happily. Nisan, can you come with me back to the house? There's something I want you to help me with. XXXXXXXXXXX. Kakashi was standing there just staring in complete shock. Seeing his reaction, Naruto couldn't help but laugh. So do you think it's a good jutsu? Good. Kakashi gasped. Naruto, it's. Kakashi was trying to find a strong enough description for what Naruto had just shown him. Naruto's good humor faded a bit. It's a perfect defense for the Sharingan. According to Hinata, it works against the Byakugan too. I suspect it will work against any Dujutsu. Kakashi shook his head. Dujutsus, eye techniques, were considered the most powerful and effective of all ninja techniques. A jutsu that could defeat them was incredibly valuable. Even if there was a drawback. When you use it though, you'll be left under the same conditions as your opponent. Naruto nodded. I'll take those odds every time. Nisan, you and Hinata are the only ones who know about this new technique. I need it kept secret. Kakashi nodded. Of course, you don't want Itachi to hear about it and try to develop a counter to it. No, Naruto thought. I wouldn't want Itachi or any of the other Uchihas knowing about it. XXXXXXXXXX. Shikamaru sucked in his breath as the air rushed violently past. Before his eyes he saw trees being cut down like blades of grass. But what was more frightening? Temari was standing right beside him with a huge smile and a look of exhilaration. After a minute or so the winds died down again and he was looking out on a couple square miles of what had been forest but was now just debris and stumps. Temari shut her fan with a snap and turned to him reeking of contentment. How was that? Scary, he answered truthfully. That only made her laugh. It feels really good to have my fan back and actually be able to use it again. Being a hostage is not my idea of fun. So, after I work out a bit and get back in fighting trim, will our good friend the Hokage make me a leaf nin? Shikamaru slowly nodded. Naruto says that if you swear an oath he'll enroll you as a genin. Genin, she said sharply. Who the hell said anything about me being a genin? Shikamaru quirked an eyebrow. Wasn't that your rank in Suna? Only because we surrendered before I could be promoted. Temari replied. Tell him to give me the Jonin test and I guarantee I'll pass it. Jonin. Temari, you haven't used a jutsu or held a kunai in almost 3 years. You think you're ready to try out for Jonin? She shrugged. Just give me a couple weeks to work out and I guarantee I'll be fine. Her smile suddenly grew and she leaned in closer to her fiancé. Oh, by the way, Asuma and Choji dropped by the other day. They said something about a bachelor party. She leaned in some more until her nose was an inch from his. She was smiling but her eyes held tiny little storm clouds. You're not planning on having one, are you? Well, it's sort of a sacred male tradition here. He mumbled as he took a couple steps back. Oh yeah, Temari said sweetly. Well, in Suna we have a male tradition too. It's called castration. The women in my village practice it on their men if they prefer drinking and chasing strippers to being with their loving fiancés. Shikamaru could feel the blood draining from his face. Geez, I forgot just how scary she really is. And I just had to fall in love with her. Man, what a drag. On second thought, a bachelor party would probably be troublesome. XXXXXXXXXX. Naruto looked up from the scroll he was studying. You look bored. Yugito shrugged. Well, guarding you isn't exactly the most exciting job I've ever had. You know you can sit down if you want. She shook her head. As long as I'm on duty I'll stand. He smiled. Why don't you take a 15-minute break? I promise not to tell your boss. She looked at him for a moment, not sure if he was serious. When he pulled out the chair next to him she went ahead and sat down. She wasn't tired, she just thought it was easier to amuse him. You know you're very difficult to figure out. Thank you. I enjoy being a mystery to people. Yugito looked at him seriously. I have read your entry in the bingo book. I know you have killed and gone on your share of S and A ranked missions. You were also a Jinchuriki until just recently. All of which means you cannot possibly be as cheerful and naive as you act. Sure I can, Naruto said. It's really not that hard. She shook her head. Are you ever serious? Only when I have to be. Tell me, how do you expect to be the leader of your village with such an attitude? A cage has to be strong enough to do whatever is necessary for the good of the village. You mean like your raikage? She nodded. Yes, the raikage is able to make hard choices and the sacrifices that are necessary. Oh, I believe that, Naruto nodded. I'm sure he'd be more than happy to sacrifice you, for instance, for the good of the village. She frowned at him. I am a ninja of the village hidden within the clouds. She said proudly. I have always understood that my life may have to be sacrificed to guard the village. That is true of every ninja of every village. Naruto said, the moment we become genin, the moment we accept the Hidayite, we become the swords and shields of our villages. We understand that we must fight and maybe die so that our village can live. But Yugito, he turned to her and spoke without any cheerfulness or naivete. There is a difference between sacrificing a life and throwing it away. Are you sure? She asked with a blank stare. Yes, I am. It's the difference between being a tool and being a human being. Of course, he thought of Haku when they first met in Wave Country. All ninjas are but tools to be used. When Zabuza rescued me, he told me that I belonged to him mind, body, and soul. Now that he is gone, I am nothing. If we should die, it should be for a reason, for a cause. Not because someone finds our existence inconvenient. Or because they fear what we hold. Naruto spoke fervently. Yugito stared at him. You really do believe that, don't you? Yeah, I do. She shook her head. How can you stand to be Hokage then? You must know that your orders will cause some to die. You will surely be in situations where you will have to send people to their deaths. How will you be able to stand that? I will be able to stand it by always remembering that those I put in harm's way are ninja, and understand why they have to be in danger. And I will never order someone to a pointless death. Every person in this village is precious to me and I care about all of them. My godmother, the Lady Tsunade, who was the 5th Hokage, would often say she was acting as the Hokage when she put people in serious danger. She did what was necessary to protect the village, but it was never pointless. The people she put in danger were always precious to her, they were never just tools to simply be used and thrown away. He took a deep breath. That is how I think your raikage views you and others beneath him, just as tools to be used. From what you've said, it's pretty obvious you don't think I'm like the raikage. I thank you for that, I take it as a high compliment. And as proof that I'm acting the way I should be. XXXXXXXXXXX. That night Yugito drifted off to deep sleep. XXXXXXXXXXX. She was strolling through a peaceful meadow. The sun was beating down out of a clear blue sky. The air was filled with the sweet scent of flowers. As she walked, a little gray house cat with a leather collar strolled up to her. Yugito carefully picked the cat up and began to stroke her as she held her in her arms. I see you're in a good mood today, Nibi. The cat purred content. She looked up with her red eyes. A feminine voice spoke in her head. You like him, don't you? Despite it being a dream, Yugito could feel her face blush. Who are you talking about? She tried to play dumb. She heard a teasing laugh. You know, the blonde boy you are protecting. You think he is cute and you like how heroic he tries to be. He's not heroic, he is just foolish. That's true, it doesn't mean you don't like him. A childhood tune began. Yugito and Naruto sitting in a tree. Enough. Yugito said sharply. Any more and I won't pet you. Fine. There was a happy pause as Nibi purred from the continued petting. Yugito-chan, can I ask a favor? Yugito sighed. I am not taking your collar off. A disappointed grr sounded in her mind. How did you know that was what I wanted? It's the only thing you ever ask for. She continued to gently stroke the cat's neck and back. You know I can never take the collar off. Nibi argued, but gave up after a short time. She could always try again tomorrow. XXXXXXXXXXX. Naruto was at the library table working when Gameikichi suddenly appeared. Hey boss, I got a message for you, it's real important. Okay, let's see it. Gameikichi quickly handed over the scroll. He read it and nodded. Yeah, this is important. He looked over to the frog. Go back to Jiraiya and tell him me and my team will be joining him sometime in the next hour. Right, boss. The frog disappeared in a puff of smoke. Naruto got up and headed for the door. Come on, Yugito, we're headed for the tower. What's going on? Well, Jiraiya has been on the road since I became Hokage looking for leads to Akatsuki. I take it he found something. Yeah, you might say that. They headed out of the mansion. He's found Itachi and Kabuto. 79. Lightning in the sky. Naruto took out his katana and twirled it in the air a couple of times before putting it back in its sheath. That's the 4th time you've taken your sword out in the last 10 minutes. Yugito noted. Sorry, nervous habit I guess. You seem really anxious. Naruto's hand drifted towards the handle of his katana before he noticed and set it down on his desk. Yeah, Itachi and I have a long history and we have a lot to settle. It's personal for you, isn't it? Naruto shook his head. No, he and Kabuto are going to die for the crimes they committed against this village. I won't let personal feelings be a part of this. Yugito gave him a very small grin. Sure, she didn't believe him for a second. XXXXXXXXXX. It took about 15 minutes for his team to gather at the tower. He quickly relayed to them what Jiraiya had found. I'm taking us there immediately. Jiraiya has one of my Trikanai, so I can use the Hiraishin. Does that mean you can carry each of us while you use the Hiraishin? Kakashi asked. I remember Sensei telling me once he couldn't carry more than one person with it. Naruto nodded. That's right, and carrying someone uses up a lot of chakra. Then how do you plan to get us all there? Naruto took out a scroll. Kiba's eyes bugged out. No way are you putting me or Akamaru in a scroll. Hinata turned to her teammate. If Naruto-kun thinks it's safe, then I'm sure that it is. I've been placed in a scroll before, it's painless and you don't feel time passing. Kakashi said. Right, Naruto said. This is how I sent my uncle Shinzo here. I guarantee that you and Akamaru will be fine. Yugito sent Kiba a snide little smile. If you're afraid, you can always just stay here. Kiba took one look at the attractive older woman and gave her one of his winning smiles. No Inuzuka is ever afraid of anything. He tried moving just a bit closer to her. Say, pretty lady, how about after I help take care of the bad guys, you and me go out to celebrate? She let out a small growl. No thanks, I have a rule about going out in public with someone who smells like wet dog. Naruto chuckled seeing the look on Kiba's face. He turned to Yugito. We should be back in 1 or 2 days, please keep an eye on everyone while I am gone. She looked at him in surprise. What are you talking about? I'm coming with you. Naruto shook his head. That wouldn't be a good idea. You're a target for Akatsuki. If you came with us, you'd be in great danger. It's safer for you to stay here. Yugito frowned and put her hands on her hips, suddenly looking like an angry cat. I was hired to be your bodyguard. If you're going into danger, then I am coming to protect you. If you were to be killed while I was sitting around here, I'd be permanently disgraced. If you plan on going into danger, Hokage-san, then I insist on coming with you. But, am I your bodyguard or I am just a crystal figurine that must be carefully kept? Yugito demanded. Naruto sighed. Maybe Shika had it right back when we were kids. Maybe all women really are troublesome, well except for Hinata. All right, but be very careful. Naruto put the scroll down on the floor and took out a brush and ink jar. Everyone get together as a group in front of me. As they did so, he began writing out the necessary formula. Kiba tried to get close to Yugito once again, only to be kept, quite literally, at arm's length. Naruto formed a hand sign. Seal. Kakashi, Hinata, Kiba, Akamaru, and Yugito disappeared. New symbols appeared on his scroll. He rolled up the scroll and turned to the only other person now in the room. I'll leave the 5 cage bushins here, but they'll listen to you, so you're really the one in charge. Shizune looked anything but happy about that. The last time I was in charge was when Tsunade left to rescue you. Naruto flushed as he felt stabs of guilt. Well, hopefully this goes a little bit better. He said quietly. Hokage-sama, Shizune said in a firm voice. Your duty is here in the village. You shouldn't be leaving to go on a mission, especially not one this dangerous. There's no real choice. I'm the only one who knows the Hiraishin and we have to get there immediately. Shizune obviously wasn't buying it. Why not summon Gamikichi and have him just deliver the scroll to Jiraiya? Great, this is what I get for having an assistant that knows all my tricks. They may need me, so I have to go. She eyed him sadly. This is because of Itachi, isn't it? Maybe a little, he admitted. But it's more because it's Akatsuki and I happen to be the strongest ninja in the village. I can't just sit here behind a desk when I know people I care about are facing that kind of danger. If something happened to anyone and I wasn't there to at least try and help, then I'd never forgive myself. So every time we face Akatsuki, you plan to be there? He nodded without hesitation. That's right. I plan to give every ninja in this village one of my Trikanai. If any of them run into Akatsuki or some other S-rank danger, I plan to act as an emergency reinforcement. Naruto, she whispered, you'll be putting yourself in constant danger. I know, he answered seriously. But isn't that what the Hokage is supposed to do? Protect the people of the village no matter what. She slowly nodded. She went up to him and hugged him and gave him a kiss on the cheek. You had better come back safe and sound, Naruto, the village needs you. We'll all come back safe, Aunt Shizune. He wanted to say it was a promise but knew better. He gave her a cheerful wink and was suddenly gone in a flash of yellow. XXXXXXXXXX. In the next instant there was a yellow flash thousands of miles away. Took you long enough, kid. Naruto found he was standing at the very crest of a high ridge. Below him was a huge valley, perhaps twice as wide as the valley of the end, with a river coursing down the middle of it. Several bolts of lightning lit up a dark sky and thunder shook the air. Rain was coming down in one huge torrent, drenching him in less than a minute. He looked over to Jiraiya. The Sanin's normally spiky hair was matted and flat, hanging down the front and sides of his head. Is really river country? It feels a whole lot more like rain country for some reason. Gamikichi should have warned me there was a storm. He couldn't have, Jiraiya answered. The sky was clear just 10 minutes ago. Lightning split a black sky with a crash of thunder. Naruto looked up at the storm clouds that completely filled the afternoon sky. This started just 10 minutes ago. You sure about that, pervy granddad? Jiraiya frowned. Of course I'm sure, and would you stop calling me that? From now on you should address me as Jiraiya-sensei. Naruto took out the scroll. Sure, and from now on you can call me Hokage-sama. Jiraiya made a rude noise. Like that'll ever happen. Whatever you say, pervy granddad. He made a sign. Release. His team appeared around him. Yugito immediately stared up into the pouring rain. Is something wrong, Yugito-chan? Hinata asked. I hate being wet, she muttered. All right then, Naruto spoke to Jiraiya. Where are Itachi and Kabuto? Jiraiya waved at the valley below. Down there somewhere. I lost track of them when they entered the valley. Naruto looked over to his girl. Hinata-chan. She nodded. Byakugan. She activated her bloodline and began scanning the vicinity. Naruto, I've searched a 2-mile radius and don't see anyone. That mean they got away? Kiba sounded disappointed. No, Jiraiya said firmly. I think they're still in the valley somewhere. It's a lot more than 2 miles, so they're just likely out of Hinata's range. Naruto glanced to his other teammate. Kiba, there any chance? Are you joking? There's no way me or Akamaru can pick up a scent in all this. Great, Naruto muttered. This place is huge. He quickly performed a favorite jutsu. Kage Bushin. A dozen shadow clones appeared and immediately rushed down the side of the ridge. Is that all, kid? Aren't you going to make more? No, I don't want to use up the chakra. Naruto looked at everyone. I hate to do this, but we can't risk losing Itachi and Kabuto. We need to find them and deal with them. We'll have to split up. If you spot them, call in the rest of the team. We'll take care of the 2 of them as a group. We'll split into 3 squads, me and Yugito, Kakashi Nisan, Kiba, and Akamaru, and pervy granddad with Hinata-chan. Are you sure you want to split up, Naruto? Kakashi cautioned. That can be a dangerous tactic when facing a powerful enemy in an unknown environment. Naruto thought about it for a moment, and nodded. If we wait, we risk letting them get away. We all have radio communicators, so as soon as any of us spot them, we can all join in. Something then occurred to Naruto. Jiraiya, what are they doing here anyway? Your note didn't say. They're chasing someone, who I don't know. Well, as long as they're here, I guess it doesn't really matter why. Okay, let's split up, and remember to call in if you spot them. As more lightning filled the sky, they rushed down into the valley. XXXXXXXXXXX. Enough. An annoyed Itachi pushed Kabuto's hand away from his arm. You're not fully healed, Kabuto said with his usual smile. I am healed enough to work jutsus, and that is sufficient. Kabuto shrugged. If his partner wanted to suffer a little extra pain, that was fine. As usual, Kabuto's injuries healed on their own. He put up a surprisingly good fight. Yes, Itachi admitted. He knew enough to avoid eye contact with me, and we were not aware of his full ability. Now that we know, he will be easy enough to capture. That's if we can find him. The valley floor was wild forest with heavy underbrush. He won't leave any tracks we can follow in this monsoon. Our leader will not tolerate failure in this matter, Itachi said. To capture him is the highest command given unto us by the Akatsuki. So what do you want to do? Kabuto asked. We will split up and seek him out, Itachi decided. Above them, several forks of lightning filled the sky. XXXXXXXXXX. Soshiku dropped to his knees within some leafy bushes. He was breathing heavily. He only needed a minute and he would recover his stamina. From within the bushes, his eyes darted about, looking for the men with the black cloaks and red clouds. He didn't see anyone, he didn't hear anyone, and he couldn't smell them. He dropped his hand to the wound on his thigh. The kunai had cut deep, but it was almost totally healed. Without the storm, he would have left a blood trail big enough for a cub to follow. But with all the rain, there was no chance of it giving him away. Having finally caught his breath, he got up again and started to run. XXXXXXXXXX. Naruto froze in the tree branch and ducked down, hoping he hadn't been spotted. The rain and the storm worked in his favor as his target went past not 15 feet away and never spotted him. Naruto smiled to himself, and disappeared in a small puff of smoke. XXXXXXXXXXX. The original Naruto came to a sudden halt as his clone's memories entered. Yugito came to a stop right beside him. What is it? Have you found something? Naruto smiled at her. Oh yeah, I found something. He switched his radio to send. Everyone, this is Naruto. One of my clones has spotted a target. I want you all to join with me. Over. He switched to receive and was rewarded by heavy static. He waited 30 seconds, but there was no reply save for the static. He hit the send button again. This is Naruto. Can anyone hear me? He again hit receive only to hear the crackle and pop of static. Yugito looked up at the sky as more thunder shook the heavens. It is all this lightning, she explained. It must be ionizing the air so radio waves won't work. Damn, he muttered. He looked at her. It's up to us then, come on. He began moving in a different direction and Yugito fell in right behind. XXXXXXXXXX. Kakashi and Kiba were approaching the river. With all the rain pouring down, it was starting to flood over its banks. The water was a gigantic rapid. He and Kiba were just getting ready to leap over it when Kakashi spotted the kunai coming at him. "Look out!" Kakashi shouted as he and Akamaru dodged out of the way. Kabuto came out of hiding and landed not too far from them by the river's edge. "Well, hello Kakashi, hello Kiba, nice to see you again." Kakashi hit the send button on his communicator. "This is Kakashi, we've found Kabuto and are requesting backup." When he released the send button, his only answer was static. He knew enough about atmospheric conditions to guess what was going on and cursed beneath his breath. "Kiba, it looks like it's just the three of us." "That's fine with me," Kiba shouted. Akamaru barked out his agreement as well. They had actually gone on a great many missions as a unit while Naruto was away and Hinata was apprenticed to Tsunade. "So what are the two of you doing way out here? Fishing trip maybe?" Kabuto sounded polite as he almost always did. "We're here to end your life and the life of Uchiha Itachi," Kakashi stated. Kabuto smiled in response. "Well, isn't that sweet? So much attention from the old hometown makes me feel warm and fuzzy inside. By the way, did Naruto get my gift basket? I sent him one in honor of his making Hokage. It's always good to see people you know do well." Kakashi just shook his head. "You have guts, I'll give you that." Kakashi lifted up his Hidaite to expose his Sharingan. "But even if you have guts, you're still nothing but a damn traitor." Kabuto pushed his glasses up. "Would it help if I said I was sorry?" Kiba, Plan 4. Right. During their many missions and training sessions together, they had worked out a number of combat strategies. Kiba ran those some hand signs. Man-beast doppelganger. With a puff of smoke, he and Akamaru transformed into a pair of half-man, half-beast warriors. They immediately rushed straight in at Kabuto. They did not use any of their more advanced attack techniques such as the lightning fang. Instead, the two of them preferred to come straight forward and rely on their speed and teamwork. As the two of them came forward, he blocked expertly and gave ground to their taijutsu attacks. He was smiling at the amateurish efforts. Obviously, Kiba and his pet were no danger to him. His teammate Hinata had been much more powerful. The only danger was from Kakashi, who was hanging back as the other two attacked. Looking for a weakness obviously, so I think I'll wrap this up quick. Activating his chakra scalpel, he lanced into a couple of shoulders and thighs as his opponents kept rushing forward. Suddenly Akamaru changed into his true form and came up limping on just 3 legs. Kiba gave a shout and leapt back, his right arm suddenly hanging dead at his side. Kabuto smiled over at Kakashi. "You should have brought Hinata with you, she would actually be a threat to me." "I'll show you a threat." Kakashi pulled out a kunai and rushed forward. Kabuto was a little disappointed not to have the famous copy nin using the Chidori or Reikiri on him. Kabuto danced away to give himself just a little more room. As the kunai hand came in aiming for his chest, he struck the tendons in the upper arm with his chakra blade. Kakashi immediately disappeared in a puff of smoke. "Ah crap. He must have slipped in a shadow clone while I was focused on Kiba and his stupid dog." Kabuto had instantly come up with the correct answer, but too late to do him any good. The real Kakashi leapt out of the ground at Kabuto's feet with a Reikiri in his right hand. Kabuto was fast enough to just barely avoid a lethal blow. Kakashi had been aiming for the heart, but thanks to Kabuto's sudden dodge, his Reikiri instead plunged deep into the medic nin's left lung. Screaming in pain and feeling smoke fill his throat, he leapt back towards the river. The muddy ground beneath his feet gave way, and before he or his enemies knew it, he was being swept away in the torrent. He was swiftly gone from sight. "Damn it," Kakashi cried in frustration. "Just 6 more inches to the right and he'd be a corpse. Maybe he'll drown." Kiba didn't sound like he believed it himself. Kakashi shook his head. "Not that one, he's got a real gift for survival." He checked both Kiba and Akamaru. Neither was seriously hurt, but their wounds would leave them awkward, and there was still Itachi lurking somewhere. "Come on, we need to find Hinata so she can fix the damage." Kakashi led them back into the valley. XXXXXXXXXX. "Jiraiya," Hinata called out excitedly. Her Byakugan was active. "I found someone up ahead." He looked over to her and nodded. "Is it Itachi or Kabuto?" "Neither, it's a ninja I've never seen before and he's running towards the south end of the valley. He has a lot of chakra capacity." Jiraiya frowned. "How much is a lot?" She frowned. "I think he may have about double what Naruto has, but it's much less than what Naruto used to have." That was plenty to give Jiraiya a momentary pause. Well, that's not good. He pressed his radio communicator button and tried to call in the others, only to find there was no answer other than static. "Great. It picks a fine time to break down." "Actually, Jiraiya," Hinata spoke up helpfully. "All the lightning has likely ionized the air and so made radio communication impossible." Of course. Jiraiya wasn't about to admit he didn't know what she was talking about. "Well, in any case, if Akatsuki is interested in him, then so am I. Let's see if we can recruit him to join us." XXXXXXXXXX. A couple minutes later, the two of them leapt out in front of the fleeing ninja. They both got a good look at him. Jiraiya guessed the kid was 18 or 19. He had long silver hair about the color of Kakashi's that he wore halfway down his back. His eyes were silver, with tiny flecks of blue in them. He had on some ratty tan-colored shirt and pants that were in tatters and falling apart. On his side looked to be a couple shuriken holders. Around the boy's neck was a necklace that seemed to be made from the teeth of animals. Jiraiya held out his hands in a calming gesture, but before he could even speak the boy screamed out. "Leave me alone." Hinata could see his chakra suddenly spike and seem to reach up into the air. With her Byakugan she could also see 2 bolts of lightning coming down as if being drawn in by the boy's chakra. She had only enough time to scream a warning as she leapt away. Jiraiya. The light was blinding and she could feel the heat of the lightning as it struck the ground where she'd been just a second before. It was horribly close but a clean miss. Jiraiya had only begun to leap and had been struck full on. He screamed as his body convulsed and shook and burned. He fell to the ground mercifully unconscious. Hinata rushed over to help him. A quick diagnostic jutsu revealed that his life was not in immediate danger. However, he was suffering severe 2nd and 3rd degree burns over much of his left shoulder, chest, and back. If he'd been awake he'd have been screaming. She immediately began the correct medical jutsu to start repairing the worst of it. But when this was over he would have to be transferred to Konoha Hospital's burn ward. The boy had not stopped running. He had not even looked back over his shoulder to see the results of what he had done. With her Byakugan still active she watched as he ran, but could do nothing about it. XXXXXXXXXXX. The ninja they were pursuing had stopped and so did they. From across about 20 yards of forest they looked each other over. Naruto gave a very slight nod as proof of a grudging respect. "Hello Itachi-kun." Just the tiniest hint of a smile appeared on the Akatsuki's face. "Hello Naruto-kun." 80. Third and final. The two faced each other in the pouring rain. The Hokage and the traitor. Yugito stood just a couple steps behind Naruto as usual. She could feel his killer intent rising higher and higher. She noticed his hands trembling just a bit. She looked across to where Itachi stood. She knew to avoid looking at his face. He seemed completely calm. She could sense nothing from him at all. "Your right sleeve looks burned," Naruto commented. "I was struck by lightning," Itachi replied calmly. "You hurt?" Itachi shook his head a bit. The injury was minor and has been healed by Kabuto. An uncomfortable silence fell between them. The only sound was the rain. "You may doubt this," Itachi finally spoke, "but it pleases me to see you alive, Naruto-kun." "Well, that is surprising, considering it was you who captured me." Itachi made no apologies. "It was the command of my organization that I do so." Naruto smirked a bit. "And we all know how much loyalty means to you." Another silence fell between them. High above them lightning filled the sky. "How are you alive, Naruto-kun?" Itachi asked. "When we departed you were certainly dead. Since the lady Tsunade was alive at that point I assumed that she was responsible." Yugito gasped and looked to Naruto. He was actually dead. This guy is just full of surprises. Naruto nodded. "My godmother used a forbidden technique and brought me back to life, at the cost of her own." He couldn't quite keep the anger out of his voice. "And now you want revenge, is that it?" Yes, Naruto was finally willing to admit it. "I want revenge, not only for my godmother and myself but for the village and for everyone you betrayed." "This is foolishness, Naruto-kun." Itachi almost sounded sad. "You cannot hope to defeat me. You're an arrogant bastard." "It is not arrogance, Naruto-kun. It is simple fact. Even with the power of the Kyuubi you were no match for my Sharingan." A slow smile crossed Naruto's face. "Gee Itachi, you sound like most of the other Uchihas relying on your Sharingan. I thought that was what you hated about your clan." As Itachi frowned at him, Naruto carefully whispered to Yugito. "Can you see in the dark?" His question caught her by surprise. "Huh. I know cats have night vision, do you?" She hesitated. She didn't like sharing her secrets, but answered him. "Yes, I do." "Good, get ready. I will not kill you, Naruto-kun," Itachi announced. "But if you choose to attack me I will shatter your mind again." "Oh really?" Naruto replied. "You won't kill me. And what makes me so special? Do you remember when we first met, Naruto-kun?" Naruto nodded. He doubted he would ever forget it. "I was a student leaving the academy with my mom. Yes, I looked at you with my Sharingan. You asked me what I saw. Do you remember what my answer was? You said I was a mystery." Naruto answered. He could still remember squirming underneath Itachi's gaze. "So what do you see now?" "I see a very powerful ninja, a worthy Hokage, and a man I respect. In this world there are only a handful of men that I respect. I would hate to lose you." Naruto was surprised to hear that, and even more surprised to find that he appreciated the compliment. Unlike most people in the world, Itachi would never say anything he did not believe. Naruto stiffened his back and gave his opponent a full bow. "Thank you, and I will admit that I respect your courage and your skill, almost as much as I loathe the choices you have made. This is the third time we have faced each other and it will be the last." He brought his hands up and began forming signs. "Fight me to the death." He completed the jutsu, Sphere of Eternal Night. To both Itachi and Naruto, everything suddenly went black. This was not the darkness of night. This was complete darkness where even the smallest flicker of light had been banished. Had there been someone else nearby, they would have seen a massive dome about 200 yards across appear. The rain passed through it, but nothing at all could be seen but an inky blackness. A sudden terror filled Itachi's heart. He was blind. This was his one secret fear. He feared it much more than death. Since activating his Mangekyo, his sight had been slowly failing him. He was terrified. He clamped down on the fear. What is this? Somehow his voice was without a trace of worry. Kage Bushin no Jutsu. 100 clones came into being and surrounded Itachi's chakra signature. Naruto was just as blind as his opponent, but he had long since developed excellent chakra sensing skills. He was more than willing to fight blind. This is a special jutsu that I developed specifically to counter the Sharingan. That is impossible. Itachi ground out. He could sense chakra as well, but his skill was nowhere near as developed as Naruto's. No genjutsu can fool the Sharingan. Who said it was a genjutsu? This is a ninjutsu. I create a field that absorbs light and chakra. I got the idea from an earth-style jutsu that does the same using a dome. Along with blinding you, it will slowly absorb your chakra and feed it into me. Naruto smiled, though Itachi could not see it. So the longer we stay here, the stronger I get and the weaker you get. Itachi could feel the slight drain on his chakra. I see, then I suppose I cannot waste time. He quickly leapt up and formed hand signs. Phoenix Immortal Fire Technique. Dozens of small gobs of fire flew from his mouth. The clones drew their swords and closed in. The true Naruto rushed forward as well. Yugito could see clearly what was going on. She was the only one who could. Itachi's fireballs were small but enough to destroy several of the clones. The rest kept coming. Things seemed to be getting serious. Looks like I finally get to fight. She released the demonic chakra within her and took the form of a miniature Nibi standing 10 feet high. Her duty was to protect Naruto, and she intended to, hurrying to get to his side. Both Itachi and Naruto could sense the immense chakra that Yugito released. Itachi could only take note of it while Naruto smiled. Grand Fireball Technique. Itachi sent out 3 massive boulders of flame. In each hand he then took 4 shuriken and fired them off towards the clones that were dodging the boulders. He could hear the light pops through the rain and sense some of the chakra signatures disappearing. But not enough of them. He continued to move and dodge wildly, trying to keep space between him and the sword-wielding clones. Again and again he tossed handfuls of shuriken and kunai. He was hitting some of them, but the rest kept closing in. He landed and pressed his back against a tree. He was in a desperate situation without the use of his Sharingan. He was intelligent enough to see the irony. He had condemned his clan for relying on the Sharingan and their Uchiha blood to always ensure victory. To him it had been an unforgivable sign of weakness. Yet facing Naruto, he had been relying on the Mangekyo to ensure his own victory. But he did still have another option. I am truly sorry that it has come to this, Naruto, but you leave me no choice. Amaterasu. From out of Itachi's right eye came a terrible wall of black fire. It spread out like a wave and devoured everything it touched. Though Itachi could not see it, he could hear the pops of all Naruto's shadow clones being annihilated as the fire rushed on towards the 2 remaining people before him. I am sorry, Naruto. Naruto stopped his charge as he got the memories from his clones. None of them could see anything, of course. But what they all had in common was a sense of intense heat before dispelling. He could sense one hell of a big jutsu coming straight towards him. He was about to leap when he felt a pair of claws grab him by the shoulders and slammed him onto the wet earth. He then felt himself being covered up by a huge body that seemed to be made of chakra. Stay down, Yugito screamed. She could see what was coming, a wave of fire that was turning everything to ash. With Naruto safely beneath her, she covered him up as best she could. The black flames reached her and it felt like being thrown into the sun. She would have never believed it, but even a creature of elemental fire like the Nibi could burn. The jutsu attacked her deliberately as though trying to burn a way through her to reach Naruto. It destroyed the surface of her form, but more demonic chakra flowed out of her to rebuild and replace what was lost. On the black flames came determined to turn her to ashes. Again and again the Nibi's chakra resisted and fought back, keeping the black fire from Yugito's tender flesh. After more than a minute of this fiery assault, the last of the Amaterasu was exhausted. With the threat gone, Yugito released her demonic form and crumpled onto the grass next to an unharmed Naruto. Naruto got up to his knees and reached over to her. He could sense her but still not see her. As he was trying to get a hold of her, he put his hands down somewhere below her shoulders and above her stomach. What are you doing? A tired but very surprised Yugito asked. She could actually see him blushing as he yanked his hands back. He of course could not see her blush. I was just wanting to see if you were all right, honest. I'm fine, she assured him. But stopping that jutsu took everything out of me. Thank you for protecting me, he said sincerely. I'm your bodyguard, that's what you hired me for, Yugito said. Stay right here, I'll be back as soon as I can. That's a promise. He ran off towards Itachi. Itachi pushed himself away from the tree. Amaterasu had taken a whole lot out of him. He wasn't sure what had happened, but Naruto was coming towards him while the demonic chakra he'd sensed was greatly diminished. Did the two tails protect you from my attack? Is that how you survived, Naruto? Itachi called out. Her name is Yugito. Naruto shouted back. He began taking out his tri-kunai and throwing them one after another at Itachi. All the kunai he carried now were tri-kunai. If you have to talk about her, call her by her name. Itachi sighed. He could hear the kunai coming at him and he managed to dodge easily. It seemed Naruto was a bit distracted. Your attacks are weak, Naruto, and the emotion in your voice is obvious. I told you long ago that you needed to turn away from emotions, they only weaken you. Naruto kept tossing his tri-kunai and continued to miss. If you still believe that after all this time, then you're a fool. A ninja's true strength is only revealed when he is trying to protect those who are precious to him. I've seen what people can do when they are fighting to protect what they love. That is when they can become as strong as they need to be. No, Naruto-kun, love is only an impediment, a weakness. Concern for others will only distract you from your ultimate goal. To achieve power, you must be prepared to act ruthlessly in your own interest regardless of others. You're sick. Naruto growled out. How can you stand to feel that way? I am the Hokage and I have power. But it would mean nothing to me if I didn't have people to share it with. If I didn't have people I treasured and wanted to protect. In the blackness, Itachi slowly shook his head. It is a pity, Naruto-kun. I had hoped that your eyes would open. I had hoped that you would see this world for what it truly is, a heartless jungle where the strong devour weak. I had hoped you would see the truth and become truly strong. If you mean become like you, I'd rather die first. I'd much rather die than be like you and not care for anyone else. Itachi came to a stop and Naruto stopped throwing tri-kunai. Instead, he now pulled out his katana. Itachi, is there any chance you would be willing to surrender to me and return to Konoha to face trial? That almost got a smile. No. In that case, let's end this. With a yellow flash, Itachi could not see Naruto disappeared. He reappeared directly behind Itachi near one of the tri-kunai he had thrown. Moving as fast as he could, Naruto rammed his sword into Itachi's back and forced it in all the way to the hilt. Crying out in pain and surprise, Itachi felt like he'd been cut in half. He opened his mouth and gagged out blood. It's over, Naruto said calmly. He ended his jutsu and the darkness surrounding them disappeared. The ground they stood on was all blackened ash except for a small area of grass where Yugito was. The rain was still pouring down. Naruto stood directly behind Itachi, still holding his katana with both hands. Itachi's blood was flowing out of him and mixing with the rain. Itachi was looking down at 2 feet of steel coming out of the middle of his chest. He was coughing up more blood and could feel himself growing cold. Congratulations, Naruto-kun, you've killed me. There was no anger in Itachi's voice, though there seemed to be regret. Itachi, please answer me one question. How do I defeat pain? If you still have any affection for our village, please tell me. Though it hurt, Itachi chuckled a bit. Not for the village, but for you, Naruto-kun, I will answer. He coughed up some more blood and began to shake. Use the same jutsu, he has the Rinnegan, he is stronger than me, he is 6. Itachi began gasping for air. What do you mean he is 6? 6 what? Itachi turned his face up towards the heavens. I can't see, I am blind. Those were his final words. Without another sound, he slumped forward and slid out of the katana and to the blackened ground. Naruto carefully checked his pulse to confirm there was none. He could sense no chakra coming from Itachi's body. Naruto simply stood there and looked down at the body. It was finally over. Uchiha Itachi was dead. 81. The decision of Uchiha Ryuki. Author's note, I have decided to change this story's rating from T to M due to a disturbing scene in this chapter. Naruto simply stood there looking down at the lifeless form of Uchiha Itachi. It was very strange. He felt satisfied, but also just the tiniest bit sad. He looked at his katana. He wouldn't have to wipe it down as the rain had already washed away the blood. He put it back in its sheath. You did it. Naruto looked up to see Yugito approaching. Yeah, I guess I did. Are you all right? I'm fine, she assured him. I wasn't actually wounded, just tired and I recover fast. Naruto simply nodded. He knew something about that. He reached down and without ceremony slipped the ring off Itachi's right hand and placed it on the ring finger of his own. To the victor go the spoils. Yugito was a bit surprised but not offended. Cloud Nins regularly searched the bodies of dead enemies, and sometimes dead allies too. Naruto turned to her. I wear 2 pieces of jewelry. He grinned. When I marry Hinata-chan, I'll wear 3. From beneath his clothes and armor, he pulled out his necklace and displayed it to her. This is the Shodai's necklace. It was made for the Shodai Hokage, the founder of my village. He gave it to his granddaughter, the Lady Tsunade. She gave it to me on my 13th birthday. She always believed that it was cursed and that anyone who wore it who was not destined to be Hokage would die. She told me it was proof of her belief that I would be Hokage one day. He paused and had to choke back some of the raw emotions from the memory. For me, this is a constant reminder not only of her but of everyone I love and everyone I want to protect. He slipped the necklace back beneath his clothes. He held up his right hand. This is a reminder of the enemies that will always be there to threaten me and those people I love. Together they will remind me of everything good and bad in my life. She slowly nodded. I see. Naruto looked up into the sky. I think it's finally starting to lighten up a little. But I can't write a scroll until it stops. He performed a jutsu and a clone appeared. The clone carefully picked up Itachi's body. Kabuto is still out there somewhere. Let's go find the others. XXXXXXXXXXX. It took a while, but eventually the full team was reunited near the southern end of the valley. Jiraiya was still unconscious, but Hinata assured everyone that he would recover. Kiba and Akamaru had already been patched up and were fine. The fact that Kabuto might still be alive was disappointing. Everyone was stunned to see the corpse of Itachi. Except for Orochimaru, he was the worst traitor the village ever knew. Kakashi said. And our squad put them both in the ground. Kiba said proudly. Hinata noticed that Naruto didn't look especially happy. Are you alright, Naruto-kun? He nodded and gave her a weary smile. I'm glad that I killed him, no regrets there. But he was a great ninja and I respected him, even though I hated him. There is nothing wrong with respecting a worthy adversary, Kakashi counseled, and whatever else he was, Itachi was definitely that. Well, at the very least it means this mission was definitely worthwhile. He had other thoughts on his mind. Hinata-chan, tell me about this ninja who attacked Jiraiya. I don't think he was trying to attack him, Hinata said carefully. He just seemed frightened and desperate to get away. If he'd already been attacked by Itachi and Kabuto, it's understandable if he was feeling desperate, Kakashi said. It doesn't excuse what he did, Kiba responded. Maybe, but it does explain it, Kakashi replied. Well, if he was trying to get away from Akatsuki, I don't blame him for attacking first and asking questions later. But the fact is that if Akatsuki is interested in him, I am too. He paused. He might just be a Jinchuriki. You think so? Yugito asked curiously. Naruto nodded and looked at her questioningly. Have you ever heard of a Jinchuriki that matched Hinata-chan's description? No, the only other ones I've heard of were you and Gaara. And that was only after the Battle of Konoha when it became public knowledge. There's surprisingly little information available about the Biju. I know, Naruto sighed. But if this guy is Jinchuriki, we have to find him before Akatsuki does. The sky above them was finally beginning to clear. It looks like it stopped raining. Kiba, do you think you could track him? No chance in hell. Kiba shook his head. There isn't a trace of his scent left to go on. He began to chew on his lower lip. We could try and track him by following his trail. But that might take a good while. About how long? Naruto asked. No telling, Kiba answered. Days, maybe weeks. If he can whistle up a rainstorm whenever he wants, it might be real hard. Naruto thought for a moment. Alright, I'm giving you and Neeson in a rank mission. Track this guy down, no matter how long it takes. But don't confront him. When you find him, contact me. If he really is a Jinchuriki, we need to handle him with care. Kakashi and Kiba both nodded. What about me, Naruto-kun? Hinata asked. Hinata-chan, I need you to return with me and the rest of the group. I want you to take care of Jiraiya while he recovers and to hurry the process along if you can. She nodded, more than happy to stay with Naruto. With the rain finally stopped, Naruto took out a pair of blank scrolls and got to work, sealing Itachi into one and Hinata, Yugito, and Jiraiya into the other. He shared some last-minute words with Kakashi and Kiba and watched them leave. Shortly before disappearing himself in a flash of yellow. XXXXXXXXXX. Uchiha Ryuki waited patiently in the common room of his home. With him was his daughter, his sister-in-law Makoto, and the 5 elders of the clan. Ryuki was careful not to reveal his impatience or his annoyance. The door to his home opened and in stepped the Hokage and the blonde cloud ninja who was always near him these days. Naruto was dressed in full Hokage regalia today, and he looked quite serious. Ryuki and the others all bowed to their leader. Welcome to my home, Hokage-sama. Ryuki intoned with just the right amount of deference in his voice. Naruto carefully returned the bow. Thank you for inviting me into your home and for agreeing to this meeting on such short notice. Ryuki provided a false smile. I am always at your service, Hokage-sama. As you can see, everyone you requested is present. Could you now inform me what the purpose to this meeting is? Naruto nodded slowly and took a scroll out from beneath his robes. Ryuki-san, I have come here today to inform you that the missing nin and outlaw Uchiha Itachi is dead. Naruto paused as there was a round of gasps. None of them had been expecting that. He saw that Makoto looked especially shaken. He had specifically requested that she be present as a mercy and sign of respect. He felt that as both his mother and the wife of the father Itachi had murdered, she deserved to be among the first to know. Ryuki was the quickest to recover from the shocking news. When did this happen? And to whom do we owe our thanks? I killed him less than 2 hours ago. The details will have to remain secret. I hope you understand. Of course, Ryuki mumbled. Naruto killed Itachi, and without the Kyuubi's power, Ryuki was certain that once this became known his reputation would rise even higher, as Kakashi's had after slaying Orochimaru. Naruto still held out the scroll. Out of respect to the Uchiha clan, I have returned his body. You may do with it as you wish. Every eye was immediately drawn to the scroll in Naruto's hand. You mean his body is sealed within that scroll? Ryuki asked carefully. That's right. Ryuki took a step back. Could you please show us Hokage-sama? You mean right here? Naruto's eyes darted to Makoto, who seemed to be getting paler by the second. He had expected to simply hand over the scroll and depart. He'd thought for sure that Ryuki would want to see the body somewhere in private. Are you certain you want to see it right now? He looked uncomfortably towards Makoto. The body is not in pristine condition. The body was blood-soaked with a huge gash in the chest and back. Naruto hoped the man would take the hint and not insist on doing this now. Gabriella reached over and put a comforting hand on her aunt's back. Father, maybe it would be best if. I think we would all like to see the truth sooner rather than later. Ryuki answered without noting his daughter's protest or his sister-in-law's obvious distress. Please show us Hokage-sama. He glanced again at Makoto, but nodded. As you wish, Ryuki-san. He spread the scroll on the floor. Release. And with a puff of smoke, the body of Uchiha Itachi appeared. He was still dressed in the black robe with red clouds. His eyes were shut and his hands were at his side. He would have seemed asleep except for the dried blood and the tear in his clothes. Makoto wailed and slumped down to her knees. Slow and bitter tears began to fall from her eyes. Gabriella wrapped her arms around her shoulders and tried to offer her some comfort. Ryuki and the elders simply looked on. They seemed, if anything, to be satisfied. I am sorry for the pain this has caused, but I thought the Uchiha clan would want the body returned. Naruto said quietly. Makoto looked up at him and nodded. No, I thank you, Hokage-sama. I know my son did terrible things and that your killing him was justice. At least this way he will be put to rest with his family. No, he will not, Ryuki said sharply. He is a disgrace to the Uchiha name. He murdered his own father, my brother. He will not receive burial with his clan. His body will be burned like rubbish and his ashes scattered to the four winds. Both Makoto and Gabriella looked up at him in horror. The clan elders nodded their agreement with Ryuki's judgment. Ryuki, please, I beg you. Makoto cried out. Let him be buried with his family. I know he did terrible things in his life, but he has paid for them. Can you not show mercy? For my sake, if not for his. Ryuki stared at his sister-in-law, who was still on her knees by her dead son. How can you even ask that? Have you forgotten Fugaku? He demanded. I am certain my husband has forgiven him, and would want his oldest son to rest in the earth with his kin. No, Ryuki shook his head violently. For his father's murder and his many other crimes there can be no forgiveness. You granted Sasuke burial despite his crimes. Makoto pointed out. That was different, Ryuki insisted. Sasuke went mad. What he did was tragic, but you cannot blame a man for going mad any more than you can for falling sick. Naruto had a very different opinion on that but held his tongue. Itachi deliberately chose to abandon this village and break his oaths. Every crime he committed was done of his own free will. He is a disgrace to the Uchiha name and I will not permit him to be buried in the Uchiha cemetery even in an unmarked grave. The words were harsh and spoken without an ounce of give in them. Hearing them, Makoto broke down completely. She threw herself upon Itachi's cold chest and simply wept. Gabriella looked at her father pleadingly. Please, father. For Aunt Makoto's sake, can't we show just a little bit of mercy this one time? Itachi is gone, what difference does it really make now? Her father frowned at her. The difference is that being buried with his clan and ancestors is a sign of honor. And for his crimes I will not grant him any such honor even in death. My decision is final. Gabriella switched her attention to Naruto. Hokage-sama, please allow him to be buried even if it's not with the clan. The Hokage has returned his body to the clan and given us charge of it. Ryuki said sharply. It is no longer his decision. The truth was that with Itachi's death, Naruto's desires for revenge were satisfied. What happened to the body had never mattered to him. He would have been willing to allow a burial in an unmarked grave if it helped Makoto. But he shook his head. I am sorry, Gabriella, but Ryuki-san is correct. I have returned the body to the clan. I cannot simply go back on my word. With that, there was nothing left for Gabriella to do but to try and comfort her aunt. XXXXXXXXXXX. Naruto managed to leave shortly thereafter. Well, that was uncomfortable, Naruto muttered on the way back to the tower. You did the right and honorable thing. Yugito stated. It is not your fault things went as they did. You know, I think I'd rather fight another life or death battle rather than go through that again. Yugito nodded sympathetically. It's not easy to tell a mother her child is dead, even if he was deserving of his fate. XXXXXXXXXXX. Ryuki wasted absolutely no time in having his order carried out. Itachi's body was wrapped in bed sheets and carried out to a quiet corner of the Uchiha district. Their pieces of wood were gathered and the body was drenched in kerosene. A few Uchiha ninja kept the rest of the clan at a distance. Only those who had been present during the meeting were permitted to witness the impromptu funeral pyre. Makoto wept openly while everyone else looked on in silence as the body was slowly burned down to nothing but ashes and a few pieces of bone. XXXXXXXXXXX. Auntie, Gabriella spoke pleadingly. Is there anything I can do for you? After the things he'd done, Gabriella had no affection left for her cousin. It was only for her aunt Sake that she had wanted a different ending. Makoto shook her head. No dear, there is nothing you can do. She rubbed her eyes and gave her niece a tired smile. She reached over and gave her a gentle hug. You are a kind girl, Gabriella, do not ever change. She let go and began the walk back to her home. Will you be all right, Auntie? Makoto nodded. Of course. She hesitated and then continued. Do you know that I wish I had been more like Kushina? You wanted to be a kunoichi. Makoto shook her head. No, she had a son who was considered to be a genius ninja who had to endure much worse growing up than either of my sons did. Yet somehow not only did he reach his full potential, he did so while being happy, while still being able to smile. I had two sons who were considered geniuses, and look what happened to them. I failed them both. That wasn't your fault, Gabriella insisted. Itachi and Sasuke made their own decisions. You're not to blame for what they did. Aren't I? She said quietly. I couldn't keep Itachi from being rushed straight into the Anbu. I couldn't keep him from feeling all the pressure of the clan's expectations. I couldn't keep Sasuke from being slowly poisoned by his hatred. I wasn't even able to have his curse seal suppressed. And I could not even have Itachi buried. I failed them both. She began to walk away again. Gabriella stood there and watched her go. She had no idea how to comfort her poor aunt. I would like to speak to you, daughter. She turned to see her father frowning down on her. Well, I really don't want to talk to you. Ryuki frowned. If you are serious about becoming clan head one day, then you should know that it requires you face difficult decisions with unwavering firmness. Do not imagine that you will only have easy choices to make. Why couldn't you have allowed a burial for Aunt Makoto's sake, even if it had to be in the public cemetery? Had I allowed such, it would have been seen as a sign of weakness on our part. Itachi disgraced our clan name. We had to be seen as washing our hands of him completely. Even when it breaks Makoto's heart. She demanded. Yes, her father answered without the slightest hesitation. My concern is for the clan as a whole, not for individual members. And besides, his voice dropped off. Besides what? Her father hesitated. Besides what? I want to know. He paused, but finally answered. She raised him as well as Sasuke. Obviously mistakes were made. She glared openly at her father. You blame her for what happened to them? He shrugged. Not all of it, certainly. Both Itachi and Sasuke were responsible for their own actions. But obviously she was too weak to instill proper discipline in them. Oh, so I suppose she should have made them feel worthless and weak instead of trying to give them love. She spoke bitterly. She knew all too well what her father believed children needed. In his mind, a parent's job was to push their child without mercy to achieve, even to the point of rejecting them. And if you want to portion blame, how about blaming Uncle Fugaku for denying Itachi a real childhood? And why don't you take some blame for preventing Sasuke's curse seal from being locked away? Or do you think the curse seal helped his mental state? Livid, she stormed away to avoid screaming at him. XXXXXXXXXX. Makoto finished the small bottle of sake. She set the bottle down and turned off the water. The tub was full and the water was nice and hot. She carefully settled into the tub. From the side of the tub, she looked at the framed picture. It was of her and her husband and their two small sons. Sasuke was a year old and Itachi was 9. Everyone in the photo was smiling. By that time, Itachi was already a ninja and had his Sharingan. He had become more and more serious, but had not yet stopped smiling. Everyone in the picture had a smile. They were a happy family. Makoto stared at the photo and wondered how it had all gone so wrong. They had all been happy once. How could things had ended the way they did? She had loved them so much, her husband and her sons. All she had ever wanted for them was that they be happy. She had never cared if they were ninja or not. The family in the picture seemed like a normal one. How had it gone so wrong? She shut her eyes and wept for her children and her husband. She had done her best for them, she truly had, but it had clearly not been enough. And now that Itachi was gone, she was tired of it. From the tub's edge, she took a sharpened kitchen knife. With great care, she sliced down the middle of each forearm, letting the blood flow. It hurt, but not too much. She set the knife down and closed her eyes as the water in the tub darkened. She knew this would hurt Gabriella and many others, and she was sorry for that. But her own pain was too much to bear any longer. Now that Itachi was gone, there was nothing left holding her to this life. As her mind slowly drifted and her strength faded away, she remembered playing with her little boys as her darling husband smiled at them. If Kami was merciful, she prayed that would be her afterlife. 82. The 77th Rule. The funeral took place 2 days after her death. Though not a ninja, she was an Uchiha and so was buried in the clan cemetery beside her husband and near her son Sasuke. More than 100 people came in their mourning clothes to lay down a flower and say goodbye. Most of the mourners were the non-ninja of the Uchiha clan. They were part of the majority who could not activate their Sharingan. These were the members who lived within the Uchiha compound as shopkeepers, tradesmen, or merchants. They were part of the silent majority that the shinobi of the clan tried to ignore as much as possible. They took pride in their family name, but lived quiet lives that had nothing to do with fighting or power. Among the ninja of the Uchiha clan, only 2 had chosen to attend. Ryuki felt it would be unseemly for him not to attend the funeral service of his sister-in-law. As clan head, he spoke the eulogy with a certain dignity, if not with great warmth. Gabriella stepped forward to place her flower and whisper a silent prayer for her beloved aunt. Her aunt Mikoto had never said a harsh word to her. She'd offered Gabriella support even when her own father had turned his back. After putting the flower down, she returned to her place beside Haku. He offered her a comforting smile and silently took her hand in his. She was so grateful for his presence. There were only 3 other non-clan members present for the service. Kushina, Naruto, and Yugito each came forward to pay respects. When the service was complete, Gabriella left with Haku. On the way, she stopped to share a few words with some of the other mourners. She did not speak to her father. XXXXXXXXXX. What do you think you are doing? Hinata asked sternly. Nothing. Despite his best efforts, Jiraiya sounded completely guilty, of course. The fact that he was in his hospital gown about to jump out the window didn't help. Hinata hurried over to the window and slammed it shut. She then turned to face the Sannin. Jiraiya, I want you in that bed right now. A huge smile blossomed on Jiraiya's face and he let out a perverted little giggle. Well, alright, but don't you want to shut the door first? Hinata blushed a deep crimson and let out an embarrassed squeak. Is something going on in here? A calm voice inquired. Neji entered the room with his trusty cane. Not yet, Jiraiya teased. Jiraiya, Hinata shouted angrily. Jiraiya held up his hands defensively. I was just teasing Hinata. Hinata shook her head and tried to get over her embarrassment. I've told you before, you'll need to stay here at least 3 weeks to let those burns fully heal. I feel just fine. I'm just going to go have a little sake and maybe do a little research. I promise I'll be back later. Jiraiya tried to sound reassuring. By the way Hinata was frowning, he could see didn't believe a word of it. Perhaps I can help, Neji said. Without warning, he activated his Byakugan and jabbed 2 fingers into 6 points of Jiraiya's lower back. Then caught him as he fell over. What the hell? Jiraiya shouted in an obvious panic. What did you do? I can't feel my legs. Neji put him back in his hospital bed. The effects will wear off in a few hours. Now please behave yourself, Jiraiya-sama. I would hate to have to do this to you every day. XXXXXXXXXXX. Thank you for your help, Neji. He grinned and nodded. You're welcome, Hinata. Since becoming a medic nin, Neji had discovered that his place in the world was not really so terrible after all. Helping those who were truly suffering had helped him to finally find some peace. He had a place of honor and was needed. How is Tenten? Hinata asked. As Neji had learned to smile again, he and Hinata had finally healed old wounds and become close. For her, Neji had finally become the protective big brother she had always wanted him to be. She is out of the village on a mission at the moment. Is everything still all right with the 2 of you? Neji chuckled, a sound that was no longer tinged in bitterness and sarcasm. Well, she's still willing to put up with me, so I guess that means everything is fine. Actually, things were much better than just fine. They'd been dating for over 2 years and were very happy together. Hinata was about to say something more when she suddenly stopped. She slapped both hands over her mouth and bolted down the hall for the nearest women's room. XXXXXXXXXX. Neji waited patiently outside the door. He could hear the sound of his cousin retching. When she finally emerged several minutes later, she'd washed her face but was still shaking a bit and seemed paler. Are you all right? Neji asked. Hinata quickly nodded and gave him a weary smile. I must have had some bad sushi. Well, let me check you just in case. He performed a simple diagnostic jutsu. He quickly found the cause of Hinata's illness. His eyebrows leapt up. Then, looking at his cousin, a knowing smile appeared. Congratulations. She gave him a confused look. Is it the sushi? That got a chuckle out of him. No, it's not the sushi. She waited, but he just continued to grin at her. Aren't you going to tell me what it is? He shook his head. I think you should perform a self-diagnostic and see the cause for yourself. She found it rather odd but went ahead. When she found out, her jaw dropped. Oh. Neji let out a full laugh and actually gave Hinata a warm hug. Becoming a healer had really changed him. Oh, indeed. XXXXXXXXXX. Gabriella was lying naked on top of her lover. Her head was resting on his chest and she could hear the comforting sound of his heartbeat. After the funeral, she'd needed this. She'd needed him to make love to her. Needed the feel of him inside of her. Needed his love and his touch to remind her that she was truly alive. So they'd cast a pair of henges and rushed to one of the cheap hotels they so often visited. Now they were just lying together in bed relaxing. It's June 1st and my birthday is on the 10th. Gabriella suddenly spoke. I know, Haku replied calmly. I have to make a decision. I know. I love you and I want to be with you. I know. She lifted her face to look at him. I'm pregnant. I know. There was a momentary pause as her words actually penetrated. Then he suddenly bolted upright. What? When he sat up, she was tossed to the side of the bed. She could see the shock and panic in his face. Though she knew it was wrong, she began laughing. Sorry, I was just joking there. I'm not pregnant. Why would you joke about something like that? I just wanted to hear you say something besides, I know. Grumbling a bit, he lay back down. She looked over at him curiously. What would you do if I really was pregnant? He turned over onto his side so they were both face to face. I would ask you to marry me again and beg you to help me form my new clan. And what if I told you I wanted to remain an Uchiha? What would you do then? She asked curiously. He hesitated for a moment, then answered in a low voice. Then I guess I would become an Uchiha. Really? She said in surprise. Every time I've asked, you've been adamant against joining my clan. That's because I want our children to be raised outside of your clan's rules and pressures. He spoke seriously. Think about Alyssa for a moment. When she was a hostage, she was treated with love and made to feel like a part of the family. Now she is training to try and become a ninja. Yet she is treated in exactly the same manner, no better, no worse. And if she were to fail to become a ninja, I have no doubt that Kushina-sama, Naruto, and the rest of the clan would still love her and see her as family. Would the Uchihas do the same? Gabriella shook her head. The answer to that was obvious. If she had the ability to mold chakra and somehow failed to graduate the academy, she'd be disowned. Haku nodded. He knew as much from everything she had told him about her clan. I want my children raised like Namikazes, not like Uchihas. Then why would you agree to join my clan? She asked. I would only agree if my child was going to have to be born into the clan no matter what. I won't abandon my son or daughter. She looked at him. Family is more important to you than power, isn't it? She asked quietly. He stared at her. Of course it is. Nothing in this world is more important than being with those who love and need you. She nodded and leaned in to kiss him. I know. XXXXXXXXXX. Naruto sat at his desk in his office at the tower. He was between appointments and had time to ponder something that had been bothering him. He is 6. That was what Itachi had said about pain. It had been a warning obviously, but Naruto had no idea what it meant. 6 what? Naruto wondered. 6 years old, 6 feet tall, 600 pounds. He had an image of some child prodigy who had freakishly grown into a 6-foot-tall round ball bigger than any Akamichi. He then tried to imagine said prodigy beating the crap out of Uchiha Itachi. The image that formed in his mind was comical to say the least. He purged the idea from his thoughts. When Jiraiya was feeling a bit better, he would talk to him and see if he had any ideas. He'd held off on saying anything as yet. He was worried the man would suddenly disappear to try and find info. Once he had healed from his wounds, Naruto would talk to him about pain being 6 and about him having the Rinnegan, whatever that was. There was a knock on his office door and Shizune popped her head in. Naruto, do you have time to see Hinata? She says she has something important to tell you. Naruto smiled. I always have time for her. Hinata entered his office with a noticeable spring in her step. She went over to him and immediately plopped herself down in his lap. She leaned in and gave him a sweet kiss. Naruto smiled as he wrapped his arms around the girl he loved. Hinata-chan, is there something you actually needed to tell me? Or was that just an excuse to come in here and have your way with me? He smirked a bit. Because I'm fine with either. She giggled a bit and gave him another kiss. When she pulled her lips back, she looked very happy and very excited. Actually, Naruto-kun, I have to inform that I can no longer perform in missions above D rank. Nani? That caught him by surprise. She had once forced him to promise that he would not try to protect her. She wanted to go on missions with him, no matter how dangerous they might be. Why the sudden change, Hinata-chan? You're not hurt, are you? He asked a bit worriedly. She shook her head. I'm not hurt, Naruto-kun. The reason I can't go on any more serious missions is because of the 77th rule of ninja conduct. The 77th rule. She gave him another kiss. You do know that one, right? Of course, I memorized all 120 rules of ninja conduct. Let's see, he needed a second. To safeguard the future of the village, no kunoichi may perform any mission above D rank or be placed in any hazardous situation once it is confirmed she is with. Naruto suddenly halted and his jaw dropped. With child. Hinata finished for him happily. I'm going to have a baby. 83. Flowers and tokens. Yugito was at her normal spot standing just outside the Hokage's office door. Hinata had just gone in to speak with Naruto. Shizune was just standing there smiling. Something unusual going on? Yugito asked. Shizune looked over and shook her head. No, it's just nice to see those two together. I've known both of them their entire lives and it just makes me happy to know that they'll always be together. I suppose they do make a nice couple. Yugito said neutrally. Before Shizune could reply, there was a thump from within the office. Followed immediately by Hinata's shout of Naruto. Shizune and Yugito looked at each other and immediately opened the door. Standing there, the two of them saw Naruto lying unconscious on the floor behind his desk. Hinata was kneeling over him. What happened? Shizune and Yugito both hurried over to them. Hinata looked up. Ah, well, he fainted. She looked a bit embarrassed. He fainted. Shizune quickly knelt down as well to check on him. I gave him some news that, I guess was too much of a surprise. Hinata replied nervously. Yugito stood there and silently observed. He fought an S-rank missing nin completely blind without the slightest hesitation. What could she have possibly said that could overwhelm him like this? Naruto came to momentarily. Opening his eyes, he saw both Hinata and Shizune kneeling over him. He immediately sat up and glomped onto Hinata. Hinata-chan, we're going to have a baby. Yugito lifted an eyebrow. Well, I guess that would do it. Seeing his exuberance and simple joy, Hinata could only laugh happily and return his embrace. Yes, we are Naruto-kun. After receiving congratulations from Shizune and Yugito, Naruto got back on his feet and performed a jutsu. With a large puff of smoke, 50 clones were packed in the office. All of them, of course, were in the Hokage robes. They all let out a shout and began to stampede out the office doors and window. Naruto, what are you doing? Shizune asked nervously. Naruto was standing there with Hinata firmly in his arms. I want everyone to know the good news. Hinata giggled into his chest. He had always been excitable and eager to share his happiness with others. That was one of the things she had always loved about him. Shizune was frowning. Naruto, do you really think it wise to do that? Of course, he replied with a huge smile. I want everyone to know. What could possibly be wrong with that? XXXXXXXXXXX. A few hours later, Naruto and Hinata were walking home together hand in hand with Yugito a few steps behind. All the way home, people on the street stopped to applaud and congratulate them on the news. The walk took them much longer than usual as they were forced to halt many times. Older women insisted on giving Hinata advice and special home remedies that they all swore would help her over the next 9 months. Some women gave her special charms that they insisted would help her conceive either a boy or a girl. Many small children came up to them offering hand-picked flowers along with their happy wishes. Naruto and Hinata both very much enjoyed the attention. As they approached home, they were both loaded down with tokens and with flowers. They were both in a very good mood. Right up until they saw Hiashi and Kushina waiting for them at the gate. Kushina was trying to look severe, but could just not keep the smile from her face. Hiashi, however, had no trouble looking stern. Seeing the way Hiashi was looking at him, Naruto gulped. XXXXXXXXXXX. You are completely lacking in restraint and self-control. Hiashi glared at the two of them. Hi, Hiashi-san. Naruto answered respectfully. And do you not think that such important news should have been shared with the family before it was announced to the entire village? Hiashi demanded. Yes, Hiashi-san. Naruto felt like squirming. He was sitting on a couch with Hinata while Hiashi lectured him about proper behavior. Even though he was still in the robes of the Hokage, he thought it safer to just sit there and let Hiashi rail at him. The truth was, he felt like a 10-year-old who'd been caught doing something wrong. Do you know how I found out I was going to have a grandchild? I was lecturing Hanabi about her lack of focus when one of your clones ran past shouting that you were going to be a father. Now I ask you, is that the way a man should learn such a thing? No, Hiashi-san, and I apologize for that. From his seat he bent at the waist to give a slight bow. I was just so excited I wanted to share the good news with the whole village. Hiashi nodded curtly. And what of the village? What will they think knowing what their Hokage has done? Father, Hinata spoke up. They are very happy for us, just look. She kept one hand in Naruto's while the other pointed to a nearby table that was covered in flowers and cards. Those were gifts that had been left outside the main gate to the Namikaze estates. Obviously the villagers share our joy at the good news. She has a point, Hiashi. It's not as if people are upset by this. Kushina said. Clearly most are pleased to know their Hokage will have an heir soon. Kushina had been standing beside Hiashi the entire time, trying to wipe the amused look from her face and failing miserably. It was obvious that she was not upset in the least. Hiashi turned to her and frowned. But now they all know that this has occurred before they were even married. Kushina chuckled. I think the world will somehow continue even so. They have been betrothed for over 2.5 years now and have always been close. Surely what has happened is not that shocking, is it? Especially since you did give permission for her to stay here. She gave Hiashi a knowing grin. He tried his best to look shocked. When I agreed to that, it was so she could assist Naruto with all his new responsibilities as Hokage. I never imagined that they would behave as they did. Oh really? Kushina sounded more than a little amused. So did you and Hana wait until your wedding day? With those words a rare sight occurred as Hyuga Hiashi actually blushed. Father, Hinata asked, sounding shocked. That has nothing to do with this. Hiashi insisted quickly. Kushina nodded. Fine, but then let's stop torturing the children. This is not the first or last time a child was conceived out of wedlock. She turned a sharp eye to both Naruto and Hinata. So long as the child is not born out of it, there should be no real problem. Hiyashi slowly nodded. Though it is far from ideal, I suppose that is true. He turned to the two of them still sitting nervously on the couch. Your wedding will be moved up to July. That is the earliest that new arrangements can be made. Naruto looked over to his love. Is that all right with Hinata-chan? Hinata in turn looked to Kushina. Will we still be able to use the rose garden? Kushina smiled and nodded. Of course, dear. Then as long as everyone can still attend, I'm happy to get married sooner. She turned to Naruto. Is it all right with you, Naruto-kun? Will you be there? He asked. She giggled and nodded. I don't think it would be much of a wedding without the bride present. He gave her a huge smile. Then it's fine with me. Hiyashi nodded. Now as both of you will still only be 15, we will require a special decree to make the ceremony legal. Fortunately, I don't think there will be a difficulty getting the Hokage to issue one. XXXXXXXXXXX. That night there was a huge celebration at the Namikaze estates. Family and friends all came to congratulate them. XXXXXXXXXXX. I'm really going to an aunt, Alyssa said excitedly. Naruto smiled at his little sister and nodded. You sure are. You'll have to be a role model and help protect your little niece or nephew. After all, the baby is going to look up to you. Alyssa's eyes widened. She suddenly turned around and began to leave. Alyssa-chan, where are you going? Naruto called after her. I'm going to train some more. She called back. I need to be as strong as I can to help protect the baby. XXXXXXXXXX. Hinata was surrounded by most of her female friends. All of them were eager to make suggestions about baby clothes and about designing the baby's room. Ino, Tenten, Tamari, Gabriella, Tayuya, and even Anko encircled her. XXXXXXXXXX. The Hokage's chief advisor approached him with a grim look. Thanks a lot, Naruto, Shikamaru grumbled. Naruto looked at his friend in surprise. What did I do? Well, thanks to you, now all Tamari wants to talk about is having kids. So, you're already marrying her, weren't you two planning to have kids? Yeah, eventually, Shikamaru stressed that word. The plan was for us to have one girl and then one boy. Hopefully after us having a few years to get settled into married life. Now all of a sudden she wants a big family and wants to start having children immediately. Man, this is troublesome. Oh come on Shika, it can't be that bad. Tamari came bounding over and grabbed Shikamaru by the arm. Come on lazy, let's find an empty room so you can knock me up. As she was dragging him away, Naruto saw him mouth the words, help me. XXXXXXXXXX. Kushina was staring at a mirror. She leaned in close and looked at her reflection. No gray hair, check. No obvious wrinkles, check. She took a couple steps back, firm athletic body, check. She let out a sigh. I am still way too young to be a grandmother. Wasn't Naruto a baby in my arms just a little while ago? Where did the years go? She would love the child with all of her heart. She was overjoyed to know that Naruto and Hinata would be having a family of their own soon. She just wished there was some way to have grandchildren without becoming a grandmother. XXXXXXXXXX. All the conversation came to a screeching halt as a man with spiky hair and a sake bottle in each hand stumbled into the living room. He was dressed in nothing but a hospital gown. Naruto, congratulations. I'm sure the two of you will make fine parents. Jiraiya lifted one of the bottles he held and drank a toast. Pervy granddad, what are you doing here? Naruto demanded. Kid, how many times have I told you not to call me that in public? Anyway, how could I not come here to celebrate your impending fatherhood? And like I'm really going to miss the chance to get free sake. Jiraiya, how did you get out of the hospital? Hinata demanded. Neji's attack finally wore off. After that, leaving was easy for the great Toad Sage. Naruto just shook his head and then ran through some hand signs. 4 Kage Bushins took hold of him and picked him up. All right, Granddad, time for you to get back to the hospital and I'm putting you under Anbu watch until you're released. Despite his protests, Jiraiya was soon on his way back to Konoha Hospital. XXXXXXXXXX. As the evening wore on, the two of them got the chance to dance together, which was something they thoroughly enjoyed. They were not the only ones on the dance floor. XXXXXXXXXX. They look very happy, Gabriella commented as she moved slowly in Haku's arms. Haku nodded. They are lucky. They love each other and they know that they are always going to be together. She looked into his eyes. I want that too. He looked back into hers. More or less than you want to leave the Uchiha clan. She opened her mouth, but no words came to her. He nodded, and held her closer. Let's just dance, he whispered. Without a word, she placed her head back on his shoulder in silent agreement. XXXXXXXXXX. Yugito stood by the far wall trying to be unobtrusive as she looked at the happy couple dancing. A familiar voice spoke to her. Why so sad, Yugito-chan? I'm not sad, she thought. I am very happy for them. Naruto is a good man and Hinata loves him very much. You are happy, Yugito-chan, but you are more sad. Why? It's nothing important, this is just how humans feel when they give up a dream, even if it is a silly dream. Why give up Yugito-chan? If you like him, go and get him. That may work for cats but not for people. He is happy, I would like to see him happy. Besides, he is the Hokage of this village and I am merely his bodyguard. I am not even a ninja of this village. What am I supposed to say to him? That I like him? Foolishness. Yugito heard the low meowing that she knew was Nibby's version of laughter. You humans are the foolish ones. Reasons are unimportant, logic is unimportant, all that matters is what you feel. With that, she felt Nibby's presence fade away. She remained where she was and kept an impassive front. She watched as Naruto and Hinata danced. It was easy enough to see how truly happy they were. She really did like him. Naruto had accepted her in a way that no one in her home village ever had. She respected his courage and his strength and admired his ability to just accept others for who they were. Yes, she did like him. But she would never tell him. She would not embarrass him by making him aware of her ridiculous crush. XXXXXXXXXX. They were lying in bed together. He put his hand gently over Hinata's perfectly flat stomach. So in 9 months we'll be parents? Naruto asked. Hinata put a warm hand over his. In about 8.5 months, yes we will. To Naruto the thought that he was going to be a father was still amazing. In many ways it was more incredible to him than being Hokage. But what it really meant was that in 8.5 months he would have a new precious person in his life. Someone he would love with all his heart, and someone he would give his last breath to protect. One more reason why I can't fail, why I won't fail. I have to stop pain no matter what, even if it costs my life. 84. A former student. The rain was pouring down. Kakashi was looking up into the endless gray sky. He let out a depressed sigh and looked over to his teammate. I don't suppose. Kiba didn't say a word. He just turned to Kakashi and glared. Right, Kakashi muttered. They'd been pursuing their target for 2 full weeks now through the wilderness. Throughout that time it had been raining almost constantly. Which meant that Kiba's nose was useless. Which meant they had to track him the old-fashioned way. Which was not helped by the rain either. They had long since left river country and were now in the middle of bear country headed north. Man, I hate being stuck in all this damn rain. Kiba muttered. A weary Akamaru whimpered agreement. He looked hopefully over to Kakashi. You know we've been at this for quite a while now. He said hopefully. Kakashi smiled from beneath the mask. We sure have, and we'll probably be here a while longer. Unless you want to run home with your tail between your legs. Kiba grimaced. I'd never do that, but we still aren't really close to catching up to him yet. Kakashi sighed again. He really wished it would stop raining. Not only would that let them pick up the scent, but he would actually be able to pull out his favorite reading material. I know you're frustrated, Kiba, I am too. But we have a mission. I've had missions end in failure and have called some off when the situation was too dangerous. But I've never just given up. So long as we still have a trail to follow, we'll keep pursuing him. Looking disappointed, Kiba still nodded. Right. XXXXXXXXXX. Soshiku sat in the damp grass and pressed his back against a tree. Why wouldn't they leave him alone? All he wanted was to be left alone and allowed to live in peace. But they kept chasing him. He looked up as a large gray wolf approached him with a fat rabbit clamped in his jaws. The wolf approached slowly and then dropped the rabbit meekly before him. With a smile, Soshiku reached out and rubbed the top of the wolf's head. The wolf growled appreciatively. Good boy, thank you. He wished people would treat him as well as the wolves did. But they were always cruel. All of them, except for Mother. He picked up the rabbit. He couldn't start a fire in the rain, but he usually didn't bother with that when there weren't people around. He bit down and tore off a nice big piece and began chewing. XXXXXXXXXX. Pain's image watched as the gigantic turtle disappeared from sight, the last of its chakra absorbed. We are done now, Pain informed them. He looked to Deidara and Sasori, the only ones physically present at the location. Well done, both of you. Now we have only 2 remaining. Sasori grumbled. We're not leaving the 5 tails to Kabuto and Tobi, are we? Yeah, that would be a disaster. Deidara agreed. Deidara-senpai, you are hurting Tobi's feelings. Tobi sounded like a kicked puppy. Yeah, well, too bad. Yeah, the only thing you're good at is running around. Sasori snorted, and your partner is almost as worthless. I think we may have made a mistake in promoting him to full membership. Kabuto's image pushed up his glasses. With respect, Sasori-sama, had the force from Konoha not arrived, we would have certainly captured the 5 tails. That you allowed your partner to be killed and yourself to be so badly wounded proves your weakness. No other group of the Akatsuki would have failed so miserably. Sasori stated. The rule is that each member is responsible for capturing 1 Biju or Jinchuriki. Pain stated calmly. Do you suggest we abandon that policy? Pain was surprised to see Sasori nod. I do. When we set that rule there were 9 to be captured and we still had Itachi, Kisame, and Orochimaru as members. So much has changed since then, we should change the policy and assign whatever team would best be able to capture the target. If we change the rule now, who gets the chakra from the demons? Kakuzu demanded. The 7 senior members of Akatsuki will each receive the power of one of the tailed beasts. Pain calmly lied. Pain, Konan, Deidara, Sasori, Haiden, Kakuzu, and Zetsu all calmly accepted that. Toby merely shrugged. What about me? Kabuto demanded. You have done nothing to warrant the power of a Biju. You may remain a member of this organization, for now. I will decide at a later date who will receive the power of the 8th demon. Kabuto's astral form looked exceedingly unhappy, but did not argue. Yeah, so are we doing this? Deidara asked. Pain glanced in Toba's direction and noted a subtle hand sign. We shall alter the rules. Within the next few days I shall select the team that will pursue the 5 tails. And what of the 2 tails? Sasori demanded. That decision shall have to wait until after the 5 tails has been acquired. For now let us all get some rest. He ended his own jutsu and blinked out. A moment later Conan's image was gone as well. XXXXXXXXXX. Pain and Conan found themselves once again in their secret base. They both stretched a bit. I'm starving, Conan declared. How about I make us some beef stew? Pain nodded. After 3 days without eating he was ravenous. That sounds fine. With a slight smile she headed to the kitchen to make dinner. XXXXXXXXXX. Father, can I talk to you? She stuck her head into his study. She was most surprised to see someone sitting there with him. Ryuki looked up from his desk and smiled. Of course, dear, he turned to his guest. A young and fairly handsome looking boy, he looked a bit like Sasuke. Sigh, we should continue our talk at another time. Of course, Ryuki-sama. The boy stood and bowed to him. I look forward to it. As he passed her, the boy gave her a false smile that was more than a little creepy. Who was that? Gabriella asked as she shut the door and sat down. No one of any importance, her father answered with a deft smile. Well, my dear, tomorrow is the big day. You'll be 18, are you excited? Yes, but not because of that. She looked nervous. Ryuki gave her a knowing smile. You've finally come to your decision, haven't you? He chuckled a bit, and none too soon. This has been a very hard choice, father, my heart has torn in half. I want to do what is right for my clan, but also what is right for him. I honestly thought he might agree to join Uchiha, but he never changed his mind. Ryuki nodded. That is a shame, dear, his Kekkei Genkai would have made an incredible addition to our own. She frowned. His bloodline has nothing to do with it. Father, I love him. He simply nodded. Yes, I know that. Love is a wonderful thing, especially when you are young. But marriage must always serve the greater needs of the clan. She looked at him. Did you love my mother? Ryuki nodded. I did. I loved her very much. But had she been a common woman who could not mold chakra, I would not have married her. Even though you loved her. Ryuki shrugged. I wanted to be sure all my children would be able to achieve Sharingan. Well, I know how true that is, she muttered. Her father looked at her carefully. So daughter, what is your decision? Will you marry for love or the good of the clan? XXXXXXXXXX. Kushina was quite surprised when Gabriella turned up at her door. Is something wrong, dear? Kushina asked. Gabriella shook her head. Is Haku here? I need to talk to him. He is upstairs in his room. Kushina gave her a knowing grin. You do remember where that is from your last visit? An embarrassed blush colored her cheeks. Hi, sensei, I do. She hurried up the stairs before Kushina could say anything more to her. After a quick knock, she was in Haku's room. He was more than a little surprised to see her. Is something wrong, Gabriella? I wasn't expecting to see you until the party tomorrow. She hurried over and put her arms around him. Ask me to marry you again. What? She looked up into his face with pleading eyes. I know you've asked me 6 or 7 times already, but please ask me just once more. He spoke slowly and carefully. Gabriella, will you marry me? Yes. She leaned forward and kissed him. And before you even ask, yes, I'll help you found the Mamashi clan. For the next few minutes the two of them simply kissed. All the worries and pressures of the last few years forgotten. What finally decided you? He whispered to her as he ran a hand through her soft black hair. Haku, she spoke quietly. If I lost my Sharingan, if I were not Kunoichi, and could not mold chakra, but everything else about me was still the same. Would you still love me? Of course. He answered without the slightest hesitation. She looked back up into his eyes and kissed him. That's why I choose you. XXXXXXXXXXX. You know, kid, I could have left a lot sooner. Despite his boast, Naruto noted that Jiraiya was being just a bit wary as he sat down. When it comes to injuries, I trust Hinata-chan. Naruto said simply. You two have a date yet? Naruto nodded. July 2nd, Hiyoshi really didn't waste any time. Neither did you, kid. Jiraiya teased and was rewarded by a look of embarrassment on Naruto's face. I'll be sure to be back here for the wedding. You are having an open bar, right? Naruto sighed. Before we go there, pervy granddad, I wanted to see if you could help me with something. Have you ever heard of the Rinnegan? And in a flash Jiraiya's good humor was gone. Where the hell did you hear about that? From Uchiha Itachi, right before he died. Jiraiya looked very interested. How did he know about it? He told me pain had it. Jiraiya's eyes seemed to expand as the blood drained from his face. Okay, what exactly is the Rinnegan and why do you look like you've swallowed a frog? Jiraiya slowly began to tell Naruto a story. A story about 3 young orphans that he ran into while in the Land of Rain back in the days of the Third Great Ninja War. He's been with his old squad mates Orochimaru and Tsunade. The 3 children were named Yahiko, Konan, and Nagato. Orochimaru and Tsunade had both insisted there was nothing to be done about 3 orphans who were but a drop in a sea. Orochimaru had even offered to kill them as an act of mercy. For some reason Jiraiya had decided to actually stop and give the children training. Then one night Yahiko and Nagato both ran away. I found them as they were being attacked by a rock nin. Yahiko was wounded. To save his friend I saw Nagato activate his Rinnegan. It was a dujutsu that somehow gave him the ability to wield all 6 elemental chakras. All 6. Naruto interrupted. I thought that was impossible. So did I, but he did it. After that I gave the 3 of them as much training in ninjutsu as I could, enough to at least make them solid genins. I then returned to my travels. I told them we would meet again when they became adults. What happened to them? I thought they had all died during Rain's civil war. Well, apparently at least this Nagato is still alive, Naruto said. Jiraiya shook his head. It can't be him. It's impossible. He was a sad child and absolutely hated the idea of killing. Yahiko was actually the one with the fiery spirit, he might be capable of being Akatsuki. But not Nagato. Naruto shrugged. People change, pervy granddad. Jiraiya shook his head. Not like that, Nagato was too gentle a soul to be capable of the things Pain has done. Well, at least I know about the Rinnegan now. I don't suppose you have any idea what his being 6 means. Not a clue, sorry. He stood up and headed for the door. Just as he got to it there was a yellow flash and Naruto was standing in front of him. Where do you think you're going? Jiraiya came to a sudden halt. I'm heading to the village hidden in the rain to find Pain and see whether or not he really is Nagato. Naruto stared at him disbelieving. No, you're not. Look, kid, if it really is Nagato then I owe it to him to try and help him if I can. He's a student of mine and I owe him at least that much. Naruto shook his head. I don't care if he was your student. He's our number 1 enemy and a ninja powerful enough to beat Itachi easily. I don't want you anywhere near him until I'm ready to bring all my forces to bear on him. Until I say so, Rain Country is off limits and the village hidden in the rain is especially forbidden territory. Jiraiya grinned and began a shunshin. You know what they say, kid, anything worth wanting is usually forbidden. Jiraiya, as the Hokage, I am giving you a direct order not to go there. Jiraiya laughed. Good one. If you go there I swear I'll ban the sale of all Aika publications and shut down all the public baths. Jiraiya froze. You wouldn't. Try me, Naruto dared. I lost Tsunade and I'm not losing you too. I don't care whether he's your old student or not. He's too dangerous for you to take on alone. I want a promise from you that you'll stay clear of Rain Country. Jiraiya slowly nodded. All right, kid, I'll stay clear of Rain, for now. It okay with you if I get back to my information gathering? Naruto nodded curtly. Just so long as your spying doesn't take you anywhere near the borders of AIM. Yes, mother. Jiraiya disappeared. XXXXXXXXXX. The following day. Kiba looked up into a clear blue sky. I can't believe it. It's actually stopped raining. Kakashi was just as amazed. Let's not waste it, have you got his scent? Kiba stood there for a moment simply sniffing the air and concentrating. Then he suddenly barked out a laugh. I got him. Led the way. The 2 of them quickly got moving. XXXXXXXXXX. Soshiku was sick of running. He sat at the top of a hill calmly eating an apple and waiting for his pursuers. When they finally showed up he was going to kill them. 85. The ends that justify the means. Kiba, stop. Kakashi called out. Huh, he and Akamaru came to a halt. Why, we're almost on top of him. Kakashi nodded. I know. He took out a kunai and sliced his thumb. He then performed a summoning. A small dog puffed into existence at his feet. Pakun, please go to Naruto and tell him we've finally found the ninja we've been tracking. Got it. Pakun disappeared in a puff of smoke. Hey, Kiba complained. We don't need Naruto for this. We can take care of this guy ourselves. Maybe, Kakashi replied. But that's not what the Hokage wants. He told us to contact him once we'd found him. Kiba took a deep sniff and looked upwards. Well, I hope he gets here quick. It looks like rain. Above them clouds were gathering. XXXXXXXXXX. Naruto was sitting at his desk looking at what Shizune had just brought him. 40 million. Naruto glanced up. That's less than what Kakashi got for killing Orochimaru. Shizune shrugged. Well, Orochimaru had a much longer career. What will you do with the money? Nothing. He put the check down on his desk. I have plenty of money already. I'm not going to bleed the village for something I did in the line of duty. Not all of the bounties on Itachi were put up by the village. Shizune pointed. A sudden smile touched Naruto's lips. Say, by any chance was any of this put up by the Uchiha clan? He tried to sound innocent. Shizune grinned as she could read his mind. I believe they put up 10 million of it. Well, that I'll accept. I mean, I wouldn't want to offend them or anything. Shizune giggled a bit and smiled. Well, heaven forbid we offend the Uchiha clan. At that moment, Pakun appeared on the desk with a puff of smoke. Naruto, Kakashi sent me to let you know they've finally caught up to the ninja they were chasing. Great. Naruto began pulling off his Hokage robes. He had on his usual body armor and the Uzumaki battle dress on underneath. Yugito, he shouted. She popped her head in. Yes, Hokage-san. We're going to talk to the ninja Itachi and Kabuto we're chasing. He looked back over to Shizune. She had her arms crossed and did not look pleased. I really don't like you doing this, Naruto. You're the Hokage now, you shouldn't be leaving the village to perform missions. She said. Well, I'm the only one who can perform the Hiraishin, so I sort of have to. He tried giving her a winning smile. I'm really sorry I have to go. No, you're not, Shizune said flatly. He shook his head, feeling a bit embarrassed. You know me way too well, Aunt Shizune. He performed a quick jutsu and a single clone appeared. Here, I'll leave a clone in case there's an urgent status report that needs to be signed and stamped. He looked at Yugito. You ready to go? She quirked an eyebrow. Don't you have to put me in a scroll first? Not when it's only one person. Naruto reached out and took a hold of her hand. I can bring one person with me if I have physical contact with them. It does use up more chakra, but it's not too bad. At the feel of his hand gently holding hers, her heart skipped a beat. It said something about her life that even such a small amount of human contact was enough to affect her. In her mind, she heard a teasing voice. Ooh, he's touching you, do you like it? Shut up, she thought back in annoyance. Naruto looked at her a bit closely. Yugito-chan, are you feeling all right? You look kind of flushed. She couldn't help but feel self-conscious, not only with Naruto's attention but the considering looks from Shizune as well. I'm just fine, thank you. He looked at her for just a little bit more and then finally nodded. Hand in hand they disappeared with a yellow flash. XXXXXXXXXX. This is so not a good idea. Kiba said and Akamaru barked agreement. Look, I don't want to fight this guy unless it's absolutely necessary. Naruto replied. That's a noble sentiment, Naruto, but given what he did to Jiraiya, don't you think it would be better for us to approach him as a group? Kakashi said. Naruto shook his head. If we do that, he'll probably see it as an attack and we'll probably have to fight him. So instead, you and Yugito are just going to walk right up to him? Kakashi questioned. Just giving him a nice easy target. It's the best way to show him we're not trying to attack him. When he sees that, he should think we're non-hostile. Naruto said. Unless he just thinks you're really, really stupid. Kiba muttered. Naruto looked at him. I heard that. Good, Kiba replied. Naruto sighed. For right now, please just watch and keep a safe distance. If a fight does start, then please come in and back us up. Naruto and Yugito headed towards their target. XXXXXXXXXX. Soshiku had picked up the two new scents drifting in on the wind. So 4 ninjas were coming for him. He had faced worse odds. At least the one with the red eyes wasn't one of them. He shuddered at the memory of that fight. He had only escaped by unleashing a full torrent of lightning into the area all around him. It had been the closest he had ever come to being captured. Without conscious thought, his hand drifted to the spot above his heart where his seal was. Not for the first time in his life, he thought about how he seemed to be well and truly cursed. Not only because of the demon inside of him, but because of his own nature. He loved the freedom or just running wild with the wolves. The problem was that no matter how hard he fought it, his nature was to be human, not a wolf. Eventually, after enough months, he would start to get lonely. When that happened, he would find a small village or town and try to just live a normal life, doing odd jobs and trying to just fit in. Sometimes it was a disaster from the start. Sometimes it would be not bad. He always tried very hard to please and was a solid worker. Occasionally people would appreciate that. There had even been a girl once, she'd had gentle green eyes and light brown hair. He couldn't remember her name anymore, but her scent was seared into his memory. She had liked him, she had been nice to him. And for a little while he thought he might be happy. But then the hunter nins found him. Like they always did when he stayed in one place too long. His hands clenched into fists. Why couldn't they ever leave him alone? He would live a quiet life and never bother anyone. But they wouldn't leave him alone. His mind snapped back to the present. He was surprised to see only 2 ninjas just jogging towards him. The other 2 were still pretty far away. They weren't hunter nins, they didn't have the masks. Just like the ones with the red clouds, they weren't chasing him to try and bring him back to Iwa. But the ones with the red clouds had still attacked him. These 2 were friends with the ones that had been chasing him for so many days. Above him the sky was dark and there was lightning ready to be formed. He hadn't started the rain yet or the lightning, but it was ready. He breathed in their scents. These 2 were different, he could tell. He didn't let himself hope for even a second that they would be anything but enemies, but he was curious. XXXXXXXXXX. Naruto and Yugito were walking up the hill, the guy was watching them from the top of it. They were about 50 yards from the top when a pair of lightning bolts slammed down in front of them. That's far enough, the stranger called down. He looked them over carefully. He looked at Naruto. You smell a little of fox. He looked at Yugito. Smells strongly of cat. Yes, Yugito replied. And you stink of wolf. Naruto suddenly felt left out and wondered why he hadn't been able to sniff out Gaara back when he still had the Kyuubi. My name is Naruto and this is Yugito. I am the Hokage of the village of Konoha. Naruto paused. Could you tell me your name? The ninja shrugged at him. It's Soshiku, what do you want? Why have your friends been following me all this time? I've come to offer you my protection and the protection of my village. Naruto answered. I don't want your protection. Soshiku stated. High above them the sky suddenly filled with lightning as thunder boomed ominously. Now leave me alone. I could leave you alone, Naruto called out. It was starting to rain. But I'm afraid Akatsuki won't. They were the ones who attacked you, the ninjas in black robes and red clouds. They are a powerful organization who are gathering up all the Jinchuriki in the world. They mean to extract the demon you hold, which will kill you. They have great resources and are absolutely determined to achieve their goal. They will never stop coming after you. To Naruto's great surprise, Soshiku's reaction to this dire news was just to shrug indifferently. So what? I've had Iwa hunter nins chasing me since I abandoned my village. They'll never stop either. You're from Iwa? Naruto asked in surprise. That's right, Soshiku replied. I never knew that Iwa had a Jinchuriki or that he had become a missing nin. Naruto said. Well, if it makes you feel any better, the rock nins didn't know that Leaf and Cloud had Jinchuriki either. And I don't think the Tsuchikage would ever admit his secret weapon had betrayed him. Do you mind if I ask you why you did that? Naruto questioned. Once again Soshiku shrugged as if to say it wasn't important. I was kept in a secret Anbu base, always under watch and isolated from the rest of the village. I was too valuable to release and too dangerous to be given any sort of freedom. The Anbu and everyone else treated me like I was a rabid wolf who might turn on them at any second. The only person who actually cared for me was my mother. She could have abandoned me, but instead she stayed with me in that secret base enduring the same abuse that I did. My mother loved me, and growing up she was the only good thing in my life. He let out a long painful breath. When I turned 10, the Tsuchikage, in his wisdom, decided that his secret weapon needed to be completely heartless and cold. So one day some Anbu came and told my mother to say goodbye to me and leave. She refused to desert me. So, to teach me a lesson, they killed her right in front of me. They wanted to show me that the Tsuchikage had to be obeyed no matter what, that he could not be defied. Soshiku smiled suddenly, a jagged painful smile. I taught them a lesson of my own, that some things cannot be forgiven. I leveled that base and killed every person in it, and then I ran away. He looked at Naruto coldly. If I wouldn't be a weapon for my own cage, I certainly won't be one for you. Naruto's heart went out to Soshiku. He could not imagine what it would feel like to see his mom killed in front of him. If you don't want to fight, you don't have to. My only priority is to prevent Akatsuki from capturing you. You can lead whatever sort of life you like in Konoha under my protection. Soshiku grinned. And all I have to do is trust that you will honor your word and treat me like a human being instead of a weapon. A dozen bolts of lightning fell in a circle around Naruto and Yugito. The lightning did not come that close, but it still took every ounce of Naruto's nerve not to teleport away. I know just what sort of bastards you cages are. I wouldn't trust you as far as I could throw you. You're wrong, Yugito shouted. Naruto is nothing like your Tsuchikage or even my Raikage. The Hokage is by far the most honorable man I have ever met. He truly cares about the people who follow him and does all he can to keep them safe. When he says you will be well treated, he means it. Sure, Soshiku mocked. He's a Kage who cares about his people instead of just seeing them as tools to be used. And I'm sure in Konoha the streets are paved with gold and the rivers flow with milk and honey. I don't believe you. You just want to use me as a weapon, and I'm sure the second I was in your village your mask would fall away. Everything I have said to you is the truth. Naruto spoke desperately. Akatsuki will never let you go. Let them come. Soshiku roared defiantly. I'll deal with them like I've dealt with the hunter nins. These ninja are more powerful than any you have ever faced. Naruto warned. I don't fear them and I don't fear you. Now I've heard your lies and I'm not buying any of them. Go away and have your friends leave me alone, or attack me and let's get on with it. Naruto stared at him. Is there anything I could say or do that could convince you? No, Soshiku said. The only way you'll get me to Konoha is in chains or in a box. He waited for them to charge at him. Naruto continued to stare at him for a while. I see. He turned around and began to slowly walk back down the hill. Let's go, Yugito, we're done here. He shouted back over his shoulder. If you ever change your mind, you will be welcomed in Konoha. Soshiku watched them go down the hill and quickly run off. He watched them go carefully, all the while keeping their two friends in mind. He waited for some sort of surprise, but it didn't come. He waited. After a time the four scents were completely gone. It seemed they had actually chosen not to attack him. He was very surprised, but glad. XXXXXXXXXX. As they tramped down the hill, Yugito spoke just above a whisper. We're not actually leaving, are we? Yes, we are, Naruto answered without missing a step. I'm sure we can take him, Yugito said. I am too, I can think of at least 6 ways we could capture him. Yugito stared at him confused. Then why are we going? Because if we did capture him, we would be forced to lock him up to hold him safely. If we took him by force, he would be too dangerous to ever let out. He looked over his shoulder at her. I will not attack a man and imprison him when he is not an enemy and just wants to be left in peace. If I did that, I'd be no different than Akatsuki or the Tsuchikage. They continued walking down to the base of the hill. And when Akatsuki comes after him again, Yugito asked quietly. Well, hopefully he'll survive and reconsider my offer of help. What if he gets captured instead? Then he dies and Akatsuki moves a step close to their ultimate goal. Naruto answered. Please don't take this the wrong way, Yugito said respectfully, but I think you are making a mistake. He looked over at her again. I am going to tell you a quick story about a ninja named Uchiha Sasuke. He was Itachi's younger brother. I had known him since starting the academy. We never liked each other. Somehow over time, either for his own reasons or because of something Itachi did, Sasuke came to hate me so much he decided he had to kill me. But he had a problem. Even though he was an arrogant bastard, he had enough sense of reality to at least realize that he had no chance of ever beating me. I had never lost a fight to him, and over the years the gap between us only widened. But he was absolutely determined not just to kill me, but to defeat me in battle. So what did he do? Yugito asked as they began to run back to where Kakashi and Kiba were waiting. He found a way to activate a much more powerful version of the Sharingan. He believed with this enhanced Sharingan he would finally be a match for me. The only problem was that the only way to activate it was to suffer the deep feelings of anguish of killing someone very close to you. What? Naruto nodded. The Uchihas had discovered this method of gaining greater power and it was one of their clan secrets. Sasuke was willing to do anything to defeat me, and so to gain the power he needed he took his girlfriend to a nice quiet spot, and snapped her neck. As we fought he told me it had been necessary in order for him to finally beat me. Naruto took a deep breath. I will never do the same. I will never start down that path where the ends justify the means, where committing evil deliberately is acceptable so long as it leads to a greater good. I'll fight my enemies to the extreme limit of my abilities, but I won't become like them. I understand, Yugito answered in a quiet and respectful voice. He truly is the most honorable of men. Once they reached Kakashi and Kiba, Naruto explained his decision. The 2 other ninjas disagreed with it but accepted it. Shortly afterwards they were back in Konoha. 86. The Path of Pain. There was a yellow flash and Naruto was back in his office. Shizune was still there and looked surprised. You're back a lot sooner than I expected, Shizune said pleased. How did things go? Not well, Naruto sighed. He took out a scroll and tossed it onto the floor. Release. With a large puff of smoke Kakashi, Kiba, and Yugito appeared. So what happened to the other ninja? Shizune asked. Naruto decided to be all noble and let him go. Kiba growled. Kiba, Kakashi spoke sharply. It is not our place to question the commands of our Hokage. Not even after he made us waste all that time chasing that guy in the rain. It was all for noting. It was all just one huge waste of time. Kiba said angrily, he didn't like to fail. Naruto looked over at his old friend and teammate without any resentment. It wasn't a waste, Kiba. Your mission wasn't to beat him or capture him, it was just to track him down so I could make him my offer. I'm marking this mission as successful and you and Neeson will both get mission checks. The news didn't seem to make Kiba any happier. I don't get why you just let him go without a fight. Because he wasn't my enemy, Naruto answered firmly. He didn't want anything to do with me. In his own way he was an innocent bystander who just wanted to be left alone. I would have had to beat him unconscious and then held him in a cell for months or years. I am not going to take a man by force and imprison him when his only crime is that he is being targeted by my enemies. If I did, then I'd be better off wearing robes with red clouds on them rather than these. He was putting the Hokage robes back on. What happens if Akatsuki get him? Kiba demanded. Then they win this particular fight and the war continues. I am not pretending that this makes things any easier for us. But if we really are fighting for something worthwhile, then we have to act with honor even when it's not convenient. Naruto said. Kakashi smiled beneath his mask and nodded. Sensei would have said the same thing. Your father Naruto was a powerful ninja and fearsome warrior but always a man of great honor and decency. Well, I still say you're wrong, Kiba muttered. Naruto shook his head and let it go. Say Kiba, do I smell like fox to you? Kiba's look of surprise was answer enough. What are you talking about? Soshiku, the ninja we dealt with, said I smelled a little of fox. Naruto explained. Have I ever had a fox scent, Kiba? Even a small one? But Kiba shook his head. Naruto, if I had ever picked up an animal scent on you, I'd have said something. You've never had a fox scent. The reason Dog Boy here has never picked up a fox scent, Naruto, is because it's not a physical scent. The scent is connected to your chakra, not your body. Yugito spoke. So you can smell fox on my chakra? Naruto asked. She nodded. Why didn't tell me? She looked at him in surprise. I thought you already knew, and I thought it would be rude to just bring up. Kiba looked at her. Hey, the very first time we met you said I smelled like wet dog. Yugito shrugged. Well, I respect Naruto. She gave him a catty grin. Hey, Kiba barked. Kakashi took hold of both shoulders and began directing Kiba towards the door. Come on, we're home, let's get something to eat. I'll even pay. Kiba quieted down but at the door suddenly looked back at the Hokage. Oh Naruto, I just remembered something really important I was wanting to ask you. What? Kiba had a huge smile on his face. You're going to have an open bar at the wedding, right? XXXXXXXXXXX. It was about an hour before dawn. As he so often did, Pain stood at the opening of the alcove and stared out at the village. It was raining, of course. Conan approached him quietly. Do you want breakfast before we go? He shook his head. I am not hungry. She was at his side holding a pair of white chrysanthemums. She handed one over to him. Ready. With a simple nod he leapt away and she followed him. XXXXXXXXXXX. Through the darkness the two of them raced through and eventually out of the village. The handful of ninjas to spot them were wise enough to keep a safe distance from their god and his messenger angel. Traveling through the land he ruled, Pain thought of the improvements he had brought since destroying Hanzo and his ilk. He had opened 40 brand new orphanages and given them enough funding to actually feed, shelter, and educate the flood of war orphans that still existed. He had brought an end to the unending series of wars that had plagued Rain Country since Hanzo had come to power. He had taken all the refugees that had been driven off their lands by the constant sweep of war and put them back on their lands. He was especially proud of all the small farmers who had been restored to their ancestral farms and lands. Hanzo had allowed 20 lords to buy up all the lands that had been abandoned during the war. These 20 lords ran their properties as massive plantations where peasants were kept bound to the land with few rights in order to make them rich. Pain had viewed the 20 lords as among Hanzo's strongest supporters. He had killed them and their families and confiscated all they had. The plantations were broken up into small farms with the ownership being passed on to the peasants who actually worked the land. The vast wealth that had been confiscated helped fund the orphanages and hundreds of other construction projects aimed at helping the people. He had done much since seizing power to help his people, but he needed to do much more. XXXXXXXXXX. 16 years ago. It was raining, it was always raining. Yahiko was looking out at the rain. How he hated it. It rained almost every day for at least a few hours, and on many days the rain just never stopped. Right now the three of them were in an old abandoned hut near an old village that was abandoned. Most of the countryside was like that. The people who were still alive were going to the cities that seemed at least a little safer. Conan had talked about doing that too, but Yahiko was dead set against it. If they went to a city or to the ninja village, there would be men who would try to use them, whether as workers or as soldiers. Yahiko wasn't about to let anyone control them. The food is ready, Conan called to him. Yahiko grunted and shut the hut's door. Over a small fire in the middle of the hut, 2 rabbits were done cooking. He had hunted and killed the rabbits. Conan had scrounged a few herbs and taken care of the actual cooking. Nagato had gathered the firewood and made a few repairs to the leaky roof. Their teamwork had improved to the point that they were rarely hungry anymore. But there were still problems. Yahiko ate his food in fast bites without comment. He thought the rabbit was very good with all the flavoring Conan had used, but he didn't bother telling her so. He also didn't bother to slow down to try and savor his food. He wanted to get done as fast as he could so he could be ready for anything. Conan ate more slowly, enjoying the meal and the warmth of the fire. She made a few comments about the food, hoping to start a conversation. Nagato ate slowly, eyes focused down on his meal. He seemed even more morose than usual. Conan finally gave up and the three of them ate in silence. That silence was broken with a few quiet words from Nagato. I miss Jiraiya-sensei. His 2 friends looked at him. Conan with sympathy and Yahiko with open annoyance. Forget about Jiraiya, Yahiko said brusquely. He left 3 months ago, he's not a part of our lives anymore. He said we would meet again when we were adults. Nagato said quietly. And you believed him? Yahiko replied. How many times did he leave us by ourselves so he could do research? When we all knew he was just going to get drunk and maybe try to bed down a pretty girl. He always told lies whenever the truth was unpleasant for him. He damn well knew we'd never see each other again. He just said that to make his goodbye easier. Well, I believe we'll see him again. Conan spoke up. You're both idiots then, Yahiko said. Don't you care about Jiraiya-sensei at all? Nagato accused. I will always respect him as my sensei and as a great ninja. I acknowledge that he did more for us than anyone else ever has. For that he will always have my gratitude. But that doesn't mean that he wasn't lying to us when he said we would meet again. Jiraiya is a part of the past now, we need to worry about the future. Nagato put his face down. Well, I really miss him. His voice seemed to crack. Yahiko stiffened where he was sitting and sent the other boy a dangerous look. Are you crying? No, the sad boy denied it, but his voice gave him away. Angrily, Yahiko stood up and yanked Nagato to his feet. Facing each other, tears were running down Nagato's face. You're crying again, Yahiko accused. What sort of pathetic ninja are you? Ninjas don't cry. He began to shake the boy back and forth. Conan jumped up and grabbed Yahiko's left arm, trying to get him to let go. Leave him alone. He's allowed to cry sometimes, I cry too. Yahiko let go but continued to glare at the weeping boy as Conan stepped between them. I know you do, but at least you have the decency to do it when you think you're alone or when you think we're asleep. But he cries all the time. Damn it, Nagato, you need to stop it. How are you going to survive in this world if you're always crying? But I can't help it. The boy wailed. I feel so much pain all the time. I keep thinking about my family, about my home, about the people I've cared for like Jiraiya sensei, and about the people I've had to kill for us to survive. I just can't bear it all. I don't want to hear about it anymore, Yahiko snapped. You're not the only one to lose his family and everyone he cared about. I happened to me too, and to Conan and to thousands of others. Your pain is nothing special. As for the people you've killed, you've had to. With your Rinnegan, you're the strongest of us, you need to use it without falling apart every time. You need to be strong. But I'm not, the boy whispered. And I don't think I can be. I try, I do, but I don't have it in me to stop caring. Then how the hell are you going to survive this miserable world? Yahiko demanded. The world doesn't give a damn if you're hurting. The world is nothing but a savage jungle where the strong devour the weak. And if you're going to be weak all the time, you may as well lay down and die and save us all the trouble. There was a loud smack as Conan slapped him as hard as she could. Don't you dare say that. She screamed at him. We're all we have, we're a family and we need to take care of each other. You apologize for saying that. Conan was rarely angry, but when she was, it was impressive. Frowning, he looked at Nagato. I'm sorry, he said flatly. He turned and headed out the door. Conan decided to give him some time to cool off. In the meantime, she turned to her other friend and embraced him, gently putting her head on his shoulder. It's all right, Nagato, he didn't mean it. But they both knew that he did. Nagato rested his head and felt the comfort of her warmth. I'm sorry I'm so weak, he whispered. It's all right, she assured him. She did what she could to console him. XXXXXXXXXX. The rain had stopped. It was nighttime and Yahiko was standing by a large tree. He didn't bother to turn around when he heard someone approach. You need to work on your stealth techniques, Nagato, Yahiko said. He heard the footsteps come to a stop. I'm sorry, Nagato said. You're always sorry. Yahiko finally turned to look at the boy's broken face. But it never helps, does it? I'm sorry if you hate me. Yahiko took a very deep breath and walked over to his friend. I don't hate you, I just want you to be strong. I want you to survive and you won't unless you harden yourself. I can't, the boy said miserably. I've tried so many times, but it's just not in me to be hard. I don't think I was ever cut out to be a ninja. Maybe you weren't, Yahiko sounded weary. But that just proves that Kami has one hell of a sense of humor since she gave you such a powerful dujutsu. If I had the Rinnegan and your abilities, he just shook his head imagining it. What would you do? Nagato asked quietly. Yahiko actually smiled for once. I'd change Rain Country, hell I'd change the whole damn world. I'd put an end to all these stupid wars and all the stupid waste. Nagato looked at him seriously, and slowly nodded. Maybe you could. With your strength and my ability, maybe you really could change the world and bring it peace. Nagato shook his head. I've reached my end, I can't keep traveling with the two of you anymore. I love you both and I love Jiraiya sensei, but I can't bear it anymore. Yahiko frowned again. Don't talk stupid. You wouldn't last a week without us. Look, I really am sorry for what I said, I didn't mean it. Stay with us and I'll try to be a little nicer, I promise. And just for an instant a tiny smile appeared on Nagato's face. Thank you for that, it means a lot to me. Please tell Conan that I love her, and if you do see Jiraiya sensei one day, please tell him too. Nagato put a single finger on Yahiko's forehead. Yahiko suddenly felt a blinding pain. It was as if 100 knives were all being jammed into his skull at once. He blacked out without a sound. XXXXXXXXXX. It was raining. Yahiko woke up with a blinding headache. As he sat up in the grass, he became aware that it was morning. He also became aware of the sound of Conan's screams. She was just screaming for all she was worth, she wasn't saying anything, just simply howling. Despite his head, he scrambled up to his feet and got out a kunai, his eyes were hurting along with his head. He stumbled over to her. Conan, what's wrong? She stared into his eyes and stopped yelling, she looked confused and stunned. She didn't seem able to talk. So instead she just lifted an arm and pointed to a spot behind him. He turned around to see what she was pointing at. There from the lowest branch of a large tree Nagato swung peacefully back and forth at the end of a rope. XXXXXXXXXX. It was not raining. Pain and Conan stood before a marble monument. It was a strange monument. It was in the middle of nowhere, near the ruins of an old village that had been abandoned years ago. Almost no one knew of the monument's existence. Those who did know of it did not understand what it was meant to represent, though mostly they assumed it was to honor the innocents who had died in the many wars. The monument was made of pristine white marble and had many warding jutsus placed on it. It was a simple column 10 feet high, on top of which a life-size statue of a young boy weeping. Only 3 words had been carved into the marble, and these were near the base of the column. Nagato, forgive me. Only 2 people understood what those words meant. XXXXXXXXXX. They both placed down a flower and stood there in respectful silence. Conan looked over to him. He was weeping openly. This was the only time he would ever permit himself to cry. Each year on the anniversary of Nagato's death they had come here to lay a flower at his grave. The monument had been the very first thing Pain had ordered to be built. As they stood there and remembered him, it slowly began to rain. 87. The wedding. Author's note, I will never get tired of saying it. Thank you for the reviews and for reading my story. Not only have I received over 5,000 reviews, but this story is about to go over 1 million hits. Thank you all so much. As for the ceremony in this chapter 1 tried to make it a mix of Eastern and Western wedding traditions. I hope you all enjoy. Also I want to announce I am writing a fantasy story that has nothing to do with Naruto or Harry Potter or any other written material, as it is all original. Can anyone tell me if there is somewhere to post original stories on this site? If not, can anyone suggest where I might try to post it? XXXXXXXXXX. Do I really need to go over budget reports? Naruto whined. Couldn't one of my clones be doing this instead? His chief advisor rolled his eyes. Don't be so troublesome, if I have to do it then so do you. The other person in his office gave him a stern look. Naruto, you said that if it was anything that required serious thought and consideration you would do it yourself and not use a clone. Shizune reminded him. But they're budget reports. Shouldn't an accountant be looking at these instead of the Hokage? Naruto pleaded. He had started looking into a really great jutsu and wanted to get back to it. The village accountants are the ones who put the monthly reports together. Shikamaru confirmed. But you still need to be familiar with them to make decisions on where to make any necessary cuts or invest any surpluses. Naruto suddenly smiled. You know Shikamaru is chief advisor. Shikamaru gave him a flat look. I'm not doing this by myself, Naruto, so stop trying to get out of it. As Naruto stared down at all the numbers in front of him, there was a knock on the door. One of his many secretaries stuck her head in. I beg pardon, Hokage-sama, but Mamashi Haku and Uchiha Gabriella are here requesting to talk to you. Well, send them right in, he said eagerly. The two entered hand in hand. Their recent engagement was a well-known fact throughout Konoha. The fact that Gabriella, much like Hinata, had since moved into the Namikaze mansion was a closely guarded secret. Naruto stood up from behind his desk to greet them. Hey you two, what are you wanting to talk to me about? He grinned. Something you couldn't ask over breakfast. Haku and Gabriella glanced at each other. Actually, Naruto, could we talk in private? Well, that sounds kind of serious. He politely asked if Shikamaru and Shizune would mind giving them a few minutes. Once it was the 3 of them, Naruto sat back down and waved the 2 of them to be seated as well. So what's so important you didn't want Shikamaru or Shizune to hear? The young couple looked at each other again. Well, to begin with, I would like to formally request to establish a clan here in Konoha, the Mamashi clan. Naruto had a huge smile. Done, I've actually been waiting for this. He pulled a sheet out of a desk drawer. He signed and stamped the paper. By order of the Hokage, I recognize you, Mamashi Haku, as the founder and head of the Mamashi clan. You shall be given lands, those lands to belong to your clan for so long as you faithfully serve the village of Konohagakure and its Hokage. You will be granted the same rights and privileges of any other recognized clan, including a hereditary seat on the council. He handed over the official order. Congratulations. Thank you, Hokage-sama, and thank you for everything you have done for me, you and Kushina-sama. It has always been my pleasure, Haku. I like to think that you and I are proof that enemies can become friends. Where will the lands be? Gabriella asked. Well, if you don't object, I was thinking of turning Training Ground 16 over to you. That's also where the lands for the Uzumaki estates will be. So you would become neighbors to Uzumaki and only be a couple miles from Namikaze and Hyuga. Haku smiled. I would like that very much. Now you will have to pay for the construction of your mansion or home on your own. Naruto pointed out. I know my mom would be happy to help with that. But Haku shook his head. The Namikaze clan had already been more than generous to me, I could not take your money. Especially not for something that is sure to be hugely expensive. My uncle Shinzo doesn't have a problem with it. But he is a blood relative, whereas I am only a friend. Haku said. You're a lot more than just a friend to me and my mom. Haku nodded respectfully. Thank you for that, but I still do not want any money from you. Gabriella sighed. I would have liked to have helped, but I don't seem to be very popular with my clan right now. Oh, Naruto quirked an eyebrow. She slowly nodded. My father and the clan elders were all for me marrying Haku, so long as he became an Uchiha. When I told them I was going to marry him and join his clan, they became rather cold. They asked her to leave the Uchiha compound. Haku sounded a bit angry. They have not gone so far as to actually disown her, but she is no longer welcome. It's not the entire clan, Gabriella was quick to point out. Most of my clansmen are happy for me. It's only the leadership of the clan that is unhappy. Which includes your father, Naruto said flatly. She could only nod. I had hoped the clan might be willing to give Haku a loan, but well, that's not going to happen. And suddenly Naruto had a marvelous idea and began to chuckle. You know, Gabriella, I agree with you, the Uchiha clan should help. He reached into another drawer. He held out a check. Here, this is for you. Think of it as one hell of a wedding gift. I have already said that I will not take your money, Haku said. Oh, but it's not my money, not really. It's not from my clan or from the village, it's from the Uchiha clan. What? Gabriella snatched the check out of the Hokage's hand and looked it over. This bears my father's signature and it's for 10 million ryu. How on earth did you get this? It's the payment of the bounties that were put on Itachi, Naruto stated. But you earned that money by killing him, Haku stated. I still can't accept it. Gabriella looked over to him. Haku, honey, we're taking the money. He looked at her in surprise. But. No buts, she said firmly. This new clan will have your name, but I am just as much a founder of it as you are. Our children and their descendants will have the Sharingan as well as your bloodline. Since I am helping found a brand new clan, it is only right that my original clan help a bit. With that, she folded up the check and made it disappear. Naruto had an amused look. Gabriella, you do know that Haku qualifies under the law of clan restoration and can have up to 3. Seeing her glare, Naruto came to an abrupt halt. I know all about that law, Gabriella replied coolly. Haku and I have discussed it. He won't be having any other wives, right honey? Haku nodded. Yes, dear. Gabriella looked back to Naruto and her look softened a bit. Speaking of the clan restoration law, don't you qualify under it? As a matter of fact, I do. Does that mean you plan on marrying again after next week? Naruto shook his head. No, I love Hinata with my entire heart. There could never be anyone else for me. Haku smiled and looked over at Gabriella. I know how you feel. XXXXXXXXXX. The evening of July 1st. Kushina was sitting down in a chair when Alyssa came bounding inside. She hurried over to her mother and sat down in her lap. Kushina laughed and gave her young daughter a hug and kiss on the cheek. Are you all done with practice today? Kushina asked. Yes, cousin, uncle and granduncle let me stop early today. They usually make me work until I am exhausted. Well, dear, they're just trying to get you ready for the academy. Uzumaki training methods are very hard but very effective. Is this how you and Neeson became ninja? That's right. Alyssa smiled. Then I will keep working hard so I can be a great ninja too. Kushina laughed and gave her another small kiss. Are you ready for the wedding tomorrow? You know you have the most important job. Really? Alyssa said excitedly. Kushina nodded and gave her a serious look while trying not to giggle. Oh, absolutely, dear. Without you, Naruto and Hinata won't be able to get married. She immediately jumped off her mother's lap. I better go practice then. XXXXXXXXXXX. Kiba turned to his friend. You completely suck, you know that, right? Kakashi sighed. Kiba, this is supposed to be a happy occasion. Shikamaru meanwhile was hardly upset by Kiba's opinion. What makes you say that? You call this a bachelor party? He waved his arms about at the table where all of Naruto's male friends had gathered. They were in a bar enjoying a few drinks and sharing stories about their friend. Naruto isn't even here, and why are there no strippers? Kiba demanded to know. Yosh, I think this is a fine party. Lee spoke up. You would, Kiba muttered. Shikamaru sighed. You are really being troublesome. Naruto specifically told me he didn't want a bachelor party, so I thought we could just have a few drinks in his honor instead. But it's a sacred male tradition. Kiba complained. Shikamaru shrugged. He promised Hinata he wouldn't have one, and Tamari told me that if I threw one she would beat me with her fan. Kiba looked at him with open contempt. Shika, you are completely and totally whipped. Kiba began to chug his beer. Shikamaru shrugged. Maybe, but at least I'll be having sex tonight. Kiba immediately started choking on his beer to everyone else's amusement. XXXXXXXXXX. As Kiba was staggering home with Akamaru patiently at his side, Kiba didn't want to drink and ride. He ran into Jiraiya and the two gorgeous women who were with him. He had a blonde with a tank top and a mini skirt that could have belonged to Anko. He also had a woman with raven hair in a low-cut black evening gown that was split down the side to reveal a whole lot of leg. Both women were well endowed and looked to be in their 20s. The old lecher had an arm wrapped around each, and they were headed down the street towards one of his houses. So you ladies ready for a trip to a hot tub? Jiraiya asked with a perverted giggle. Both women laughed and nodded. How do you do that? Kiba shouted. Huh, Jiraiya looked up and spotted Kiba and his huge dog. Were you talking to me, kid? Kiba drunkenly nodded. How does an old guy like you get such hot women? Jiraiya looked offended. Don't you know who I am, kid? I am the legendary Jiraiya. The great Toad Sage, victor of 100 battles, member of the legendary 3, student of the great Sarutobi, and sensei to not one but 2 Hokages. For me women fall like cherry blossoms in a windstorm, he declared proudly. The blonde girl giggled. He took us shopping and got us a lot of really nice things. Suddenly deflated, he got the 2 women moving again, leaving Kiba and Akamaru on their own once more. Kiba looked over to his faithful companion. Man, I hate being a virgin. His dog nodded and whimpered agreement. XXXXXXXXXX. July 2nd was an absolutely beautiful day. Hinata left immediately after breakfast to go to the Hyuga mansion where she would prepare. The Namikaze mansion meanwhile was the site of barely controlled chaos as the entire household prepared for the wedding. A perimeter of Anbu had already been set up to watch out for any possible trouble. 100 caterers had arrived and were busy setting up the temporary seats and other structures. The reception would be held outside along with the wedding. Tables were being set up and the meals prepared. Cases of beer and hundreds of bottles of sake and other liquors were assembled and then surrounded by 4 long tables forming a square. They knew what an open bar meant and expected to be under siege the entire time. Inside, men and women dressed up in their very best and quickly rehearsed their parts. All the members of both the Namikaze and Uzumaki clans were part of the wedding party. Kushina was especially busy as she ran about making sure everything was absolutely perfect for her son's wedding day. The wedding was rather unique in the fact that it had been both meticulously planned and thrown together. For over 2.5 years she and Hinata had been planning this day until every last detail had been decided and worked out. Then of course the accident had forced them to change the dates. Kushina had suddenly found herself rushing about like a mad woman trying to secure the services of all the people necessary. Not surprisingly, the caterers, the band, and the priest had made prior commitments to a pair of other weddings. Though she didn't like to resort to it, she was not above using bribery when it meant giving her son and her future daughter the perfect wedding. It had not been easy. She'd been required to buy one of the couples a new house, spent a couple 100,000 ryu on top of that, and even arranged for the Hokage to do a few favors for the families involved. But in the end she had convinced the other parties to change the dates of their weddings and so free up July 2nd. Of course, as busy as she was, it had been impossible to check on everything. Running through the halls of her home, she came to a sudden and abrupt halt. Anko, what the hell are you wearing? Kushina demanded. Anko sent her an annoyed look. What? This is what I always wear. She had on her usual tan trench coat, miniskirt, and fishnet. Why aren't you in your kimono? Anko grinned. You're kidding, right? I didn't wear one to my own wedding. What makes you think I was going to wear one here? Her grin disappeared as she felt a sudden flood of killer intent coming from the groom's mother. Anko, Kushina ground out, feeling her blood pressure rising and her temper shortening. Whether you like it or not, as my brother's wife, you are automatically part of the wedding party. You are not going out dressed like that. Anko took out a kunai and began to casually twirl it around her finger. Yes, I am. Anko replied defiantly. No, you are not. Kushina's killer intent jumped up a couple notches. Drawn by the familiar feel of his little sister's killer intent, Shinzo entered the hall. Is there a problem, Kuki? Kushina sent her brother a glare. Did you know your wife here plans to attend the wedding dressed like that? He smiled and turned to Anko. Honey, I know we talked about this. You already agreed to dress up for the wedding. Anko began to pout. But Shinzo took his wife into his arms and kissed her. Please, Anko, just to make me happy. Anko grinned and nodded. Fine, but you owe me one and I'll be collecting payment tonight. Kushina received an annoyed look as Anko headed to her room, hopefully to change. Kushina looked at her brother. Why are you still married to that woman? Shinzo tried to look innocent. Well, she did his thing with her tongue. Kushina slapped her hands over her ears and ran away. XXXXXXXXXX. Yugito stood in front of a full-size mirror. She was wearing a kimono that Kushina had thoughtfully had custom made for her. It was gold-colored, the image of a gray cat playing with a ball of yarn across the front. She really liked it. She felt very strange wearing it though, she had never worn a kimono before. She could not remember the last time she had gone out in public in anything but ninja clothing. Looking at herself, she had a sudden fantasy of Naruto seeing her in it and suddenly feeling the irresistible urge to start kissing her. She saw herself blushing in the mirror. In the back of her mind she heard a childish voice begin singing. Yugito and Naruto sitting in a tree, G. Quiet, Nibby. XXXXXXXXXX. As noon approached, the guests began to arrive and take their seats. Many of them were friends and members of the Hyuga clan. But as the Hokage was getting married, there was no way to avoid also inviting all the clan heads and important officials. It made for an interesting mix. Neji and Tenten arrived together and sat down on the bride's side. Haku and Gabriella were already there, of course. Their teammate Tayuya arrived muttering to herself that she was only there for the open bar. Danzo came and was seated up near the front. Uchiha Ryuki arrived soon after. He made a point to say a quick hello to his daughter and her fiancé before being seated. He was careful not to look to where Danzo was. Lee arrived there on his own. The best man came with a beautiful but troublesome blonde. Ino and Choji came together. She sent a frosty glance towards Tamari but otherwise was in a fine mood. More people arrived alone and in groups until the seats were all filled. XXXXXXXXXX. Naruto was in the traditional black Monsuki kimono and pacing back and forth. His mother entered his room and saw him. It's time, Naruto-kun. Kushina told her son. Here, let me look at you. You look so handsome. He nodded nervously. Thanks, Mom. She placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. You don't need to be so nervous, my son. She smiled happily. I know that, Mom, but I sort of can't help it. Even though she was happy, Kushina had to fight the urge to burst into tears. My baby is getting married. Mom, I'm not a baby. He replied. He paused and looked at his mother and then embraced. Mom, thank you so much. For what, dear? For everything, Mom, for taking care of me, for training me, for teaching me right from wrong, but most of all just for loving me. All that I am is because of you and your love. Ah, my son, she let out a small sob. A mother's love should be the one thing in this world that every single person should know. You don't ever need to thank me for that, Naruto-kun. From the very first time I held you in my arms, I loved you, and just having you in my life has been the greatest joy I have ever known. She quickly dabbed her eyes and smiled at him. Now come on, before you silly mother makes you late for your own wedding. XXXXXXXXXX. It was exactly noon. The band began to play the march. A temporary arch had been put up in the rose garden with a long red carpet leading to it. The chairs had been set up on either side. As the music began, Hyuga Hiyashi led his eldest daughter down the aisle at a stately pace. At the other end of the carpet, Naruto was standing flanked by Shikamaru and his mother. Little Alyssa was standing close by in a pink kimono holding up a silk pillow with 2 rings. Hiyashi and Hinata moved slowly towards them. Hinata's left hand was held out in front of her and was in her father's right. In her other hand, Hinata held a bouquet of red roses. Hinata was in a silk shiromaku of purest white. As she came down the aisle, Ino was holding the edge of the wedding kimono to prevent it from dragging along the ground. Hinata's face was done in white and her dark hair had been put up. Her makeup only made her beautiful eyes stand out even more. As Naruto watched her, he thought she looked like an angel who had come to earth. He honestly wondered what he had ever done in his life to have earned the love of such an amazing woman. XXXXXXXXXX. As she walked down the aisle, all she could see was him, so handsome, so kind, and so loving. He was smiling at her and looking at her with eyes filled with devotion. She had always loved him. She could not remember a time in her life when she had not. To her, he was her heart and always would be. She would never love anyone else but him. And as she moved closer to him, she honestly wondered what she had ever done in her life to have earned the love of such an amazing man. XXXXXXXXXX. When they had at least reached the end of the aisle, Hiyashi ceremoniously took his daughter's hand and placed it into Naruto's. Together the couple turned to face the priest standing before them in his white blouse and billowing red pants. Smiling, the priest took out a small cup and carefully filled it with ceremonial sake. Share in this drink as the two of you will share in all of life's joys and hardships. The priest intoned. He handed the cup to Naruto, who took a small sip. He then passed it to Hinata, who also sipped from it. Have you come here to devote yourselves to one another of your own free will? The priest questioned. Yes, Naruto answered solemnly. Hi, Hinata said. The priest looked out sternly upon the assembled guests. Can any here give just cause why these two should not be joined in sacred marriage? If anyone had dared to say a word at that point, Kushina likely would have killed them on the spot. Satisfied, the priest returned his attention to the two of them. Do you understand that the vows you make this day are spoken before Kami and before all those who have come here to bear witness? Yes, Naruto said. Yes, Hinata said. Then speak the vows, and speak only the truth. Smiling down at Alyssa, Naruto took the smaller of the 2 gold rings. He then carefully slid it onto Hinata's left hand as he spoke. My wife, in sickness and in health I promise that I will love you, respect you, console you, be faithful to you, and protect you. From this day on until the day of my death, this do I swear. With her hands trembling slightly, Hinata took the other wedding band and placed it on Naruto's left hand. My husband, in sickness and in health I promise that I will love you, respect you, console you, be faithful to you, and protect you. From this day on until the day of my death, this do I swear. The priest held his hand up. May Kami grant you the blessings of health, happiness, and children. May your union be long and lasting. I declare that you are now husband and wife. He smiled and nodded to Naruto. You may kiss your bride. Naruto was only too happy to do so. May I present to you, the priest called out. Namikaze Naruto and his bride, Namikaze Hinata. As the people began to applaud and cheer, the young couple broke their kiss and looked into each other's eyes. I love you, Naruto whispered to her. And I love you, Hinata answered. They kissed once more as all around them people celebrated.